Commissioner Salome? Commissioner Chahal?
Here.
Commissioner Ikizi?
Present.
Commissioner Williams?
Here.
Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
Commissioner Becker here, and Chair Jane.
Here. Okay, looks like everyone is here. We have quorum. So all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All please remain standing. Commissioner Becker, could you please read the statement of values?
As we gather, we humbly seek blessings upon this meeting. May we act with strength, courage, and will to perform our obligations and duties to our people with justice to all. Let us seek wisdom so that we may act in the best interest of our people, our neighbors, and our country. All this we ask so we may serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all.
You. Seated. Procedures for the meeting are as follows. Public hearings are conducted by the chair in accordance with the following procedures. The chair of the commission directs all activity during the hearings. All comments shall be addressed to the commission. Any items on this agenda may be continued to a subsequent hearing. Applicants will be allotted up to 10 minutes to present and justify proposals following staff presentation of the item. Other speakers will be given up to 4 minutes. The applicant is allotted up to 5 minutes of rebuttal for rebuttal of comments. No additional comments will be accepted upon the close of the public hearing, although Commission reserves the right to direct questions to any speaker on any matter. Special procedures, time limits may be applied to any items as prescribed by the chair. Appeal of Commission actions must be filed in writing within 7 calendar days. Copies of the current agenda and staff reports for each of the items on the agenda are available from the Planning Division office on the Friday afternoon preceding the meeting and available online. There are copies on the table over there at the entrance to the council chamber. Are there any requests by applicants, the public, or the commission for a continuance or exception for any of the items on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to the consent calendar. The procedure for the consent calendar is as follows. Consent calendar items may be enacted, approved, or adopted by one motion unless requested to be removed by anyone for discussion or explanation. If any member of the architectural committee, staff, the applicant, or a member of the public wishes to comment on a consent calendar item or would like the item to be heard on the regular agenda, please notify planning staff or request this action at the Planning Commission meeting during the consent calendar review. Items listed on the consent calendar with associated file numbers constitute public hearing items. Secretary Becker, will you please read the consent calendar for the record?
Yes, the consent calendar is items 1A, the Planning Commission minutes of October 24th, 2018. And we have item 1B, 18-1519, which is revised Planning Commission meetings of August 22nd, 2018.
I would like to pull item 1A from the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the balance of the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second. Moved by Commissioner Ikizi, seconded by Commissioner Kelly. All in favor? Aye.
Yeah, could we have, Commissioners,
to vote
if you
on-
could wait till the motion is placed on the screen
Oh,
and then the
okay.
vote will take place. Thank you.
Did you join the meeting?
I'm in.
Waiting item.
She doesn't have a vote.
Yeah, can the commissioners tell us who has visibility on their screens? Okay, so since for right now, maybe Rebecca can assist with that, but for right now, we can just go ahead and take those votes, and then the remainder will be via voice vote?
Okay, so we'll take a voice.
No, you can just vote on your screen, and then those that do not have it visible can vote by voice.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You can cast your, Chair, if you want to ask for the votes to be cast at this point.
Sorry?
Can you ask for the votes to be cast at this
oh.
point? Yeah,
Will
now
everyone
that
please
the
vote on
motion
your
is on the
screen if you have it on your screen? Yes, I believe so. Yeah. So I think you can show the vote, and then those who are not appearing there, could you please cast a voice vote? That would be Commissioner Ikeze and Kelly, who actually motioned and seconded the item. So, okay, a voice vote, please. Commissioner Kelly, Ikeze, do you approve?
Yes.
Okay, it passes unanimously. So,
Just for the
move
record,
on to,
Item 1A is now, you're pulling item 1A.
yeah, but it goes after public presentations, right? So, okay. So are there any members of the public that would like to briefly address the commission on any item that is not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to public hearings. We have item 1A. I can just, my comment on the meeting minutes, which were fine, except that I had pulled item 1F from the consent calendar at that meeting. And I would just like in the future for the meeting minutes to reflect who pulled the item. Not any detailed discussion, but just
Correct.
that
Yeah.
Commissioner X pulled the item
Yes.
for
Thank you.
questions.
So we have confirmed that that would be appropriate language for the minutes to indicate the person who pulls it.
Yeah.
But again, that will be the limit
Yeah, that
limit
would
since
be
these are
fine, yeah.
action minutes.
So what
Okay.
I'm
Yes.
requesting is that you can make those changes to the minutes and they don't have to come back to the commission. Is that
So noted, thank you.
appropriate? Okay,
I have an item. I have a question about 1A too.
okay.
Except I'm having a problem with my thing.
Well, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, for the Tasman East, when we approved the, can't remember which item, but we had like I made a motion. It was amended several times, and one of the proposed amendment was voted down, but that was not captured in the minutes.
I saw that too, yeah. It was
Yeah,
voted
is
down
that-
and then it was
should
not
have been
captured.
captured, or?
it does not technically have to be.
Oh.
Because it was so confusing as it was, I deliberately didn't insert a sentence explaining the motion that failed. But if it's the pleasure of the commission, we can just show all of our work in the future. Or I can even add it to this minutes as well.
Okay, I
it gave me a headache just writing it, but I'd be happy to add that sentence just to have a complete record if you'd prefer that.
Okay, thank you.
And then would that come back for a vote for us, or can we just say that it will be added?
You should make a motion to approve the minutes with the two changes that were mentioned tonight.
Okay.
And then vote on it.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes with those two changes? A statement that an item was pulled by me, and then another statement saying that there was an an amendment that was voted down.
Second that
Is there a motion?
motion.
Made by Commissioner Kelly, seconded by Commissioner Becker. All in, oh, do we wait for it to come on screen?
Just can't get into Granicus.
Yeah, so let's wait for the motion to be posted, and then you can vote.
Oh, because I can't get into the Granicus network.
So there seems to be a problem where she can't join the Wi-Fi network, Granicus, so she can't get Granicus up.
Let me read.
Okay,
So for the time being, I think just Commissioner Casey can just vote verbally.
okay, so everyone register your vote, please.
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously with Commissioner Williams abstaining.
Just a note that if you are able to vote on your iPad, you do not need to indicate your vote verbally.
Okay. So for the time being, only Commissioner Casey will be voting verbally. Oh. Okay, Commissioner Becker, we're moving on to agenda item 2. Would you please read the item?
Yes, agenda item 2 is 18-1303, the public hearing action on appeal of zoning administrator denial of minor modification for the property at 1940 Avenida de las Rosas.
Okay, is there a staff presentation?
Yeah, good evening. So this is a request to appeal the zoning administrator's denial of a minor modification for the property at 1940 Avenida de las Rosas. The subject property is located on the south side of Avenida de las Rosas at the T-intersection of Avenida de Carmen, and is surrounded by single-family homes to the east and west and across the street to the north, and by a planned development apartment complex and its parking lot immediately adjoining the site to the south. There's a street elevation of the house showing it's an existing 3-bedroom and 2-bathroom 1,340 square foot house on a 6,000 square foot single-family zone property. The applicant is requesting architectural review for modifications to the front of the house, including a new front porch and roof cover, and an interior remodel that will remove a few walls to one of the bedrooms, accessing off of the front entryway and the living room. And it would expand the kitchen area behind the garage. And then to the rear would add a 522 square foot addition, including 2 bedrooms, a shared bathroom off the hallway, a linen closet, and a pantry serving the garage. The applicant is asking for a modification to reduce the rear setback from the minimum requirement of 20 feet to 15 feet in order to facilitate the addition and the floor plan configuration that they're proposing. A minor modification, as can be granted by the zoning administrator, shall not be greater or less than 25% of zoning standard. Minor modifications require that the zoning administrator make all 4 of the same findings that the planning commission must make in order to approve a variance. And the planning commission would also be required to make these findings to approve the appeal. The project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act per Section 15301, as the expansion would not result in an increase of more than 50% of the floor area of the existing house. It's the slide. We'll go back to the, the applicant has submitted a petition of support that was included with their original application for the minor modification. It was signed by 10 individuals in the neighborhood. And then after the circulation of the staff report, the applicant submitted an additional petition page signed by the immediate neighbors to both sides of the property. And in addition, since the staff has received 3 additional emails in support of the applicant's request. The existing house is at a 34-foot 6-inch rear setback. The proposed rear addition would extend 19 feet 6 inches into that setback. And staff was not able to make the key required finding that there are unusual conditions applying to the land or building that do not apply generally and elsewhere across the city in the R16L zoning district, as the lot meets the minimum 6,000 square foot area standard and the 60-foot lot width standard. And for this regularly shaped 6,000 square foot lot, no specific physical circumstances or unnecessary hardships appear to exist that would warrant the variance from the city's zoning standards for the proposed 15-foot rear setback. So staff is recommending that the commission uphold the zoning administrator denial of the minor modification request.
Are there any questions by commissioners of the planner? Okay, Commissioner Salem.
Yeah, so is the setback change from 20 to 15 exactly 25% of the minor modification that was mentioned?
That's correct, yeah.
So
The minimum is 20, so 25% off of that would be 15 feet. So it's within the range of discretion by the zoning administrator, but we were not able to make the findings.
If it was a 15-foot and 1/2 inch setback, which would be less than 25%, would that meet the criteria?
The criteria for findings? Well,
Or the 25% change? If it was 15 feet with a fraction of an inch more, then it would be less than a 25% alteration.
Anything less than 15 feet would be less than 75%.
I think you're asking if it was greater, it was 15 feet and 1 inch, it would then trigger a variance rather than a modification. So the minute
Okay,
it exceeds
I understand.
25%. Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Chahal.
Just for record, I did speak to a resident regarding this, so not to the applicant, but one of the residents in the community about this. Yep. And I do have certain questions, right? If, let's say this was hypothetically, this was a ADU, then we would have allowed it as per the new ADU ordinance? Yes. We would have allowed it, right? Okay. And second thing, I was reading in the text that applicant was called multiple times. They had to pay multiple times fees. What was that about? Why did we ask the applicant to come back and pay
I believe the applicant is recounting in their statement of justification the history of their working with city staff and filing the application. And received some initial consultation on a few times from different planners before filing.
Okay, so if the applicant has to come back again on the same issue, do they have to pay back again the fees to the city?
Well, when they were instructed that they would need to apply for the modification, and they filed the application, it was at that time that we collected the fees.
Okay. Okay, and one more question related to this, not for this particular plan. Keeping in view the new ADU ordinance we have, and we are in middle of rewriting our zoning ordinance, are we in process of changing these setback limits, like from 20 to something lower, because we need more housing and more people are expanding their houses? Is it that in plans?
Well, I think we're examining the setbacks, but we haven't yet created a draft to bring out to the public for review yet.
Okay, so this is under discussion, basically, sort of.
Yeah, we're still developing a draft or update of the code for the community to look at.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Commissioner Becker.
I don't know if Commissioner Chahal asked this one. I was distracted for a second, but the email that we got in saying that they were approving this same kind of setback, 15-foot setback 5 years ago, is that true? I mean, it seems like that neighborhood pretty much knows.
In my review of the history on this block, there was one modification granted for, let's see, does this have a pointer?
1910?
At 1910, which is to the far right on your screen at the edge of the street elbow.
Mm-hmm.
So the lot has a somewhat irregular shape, and modification was granted for that particular property to allow a 15-foot rear setback.
And there's been no other neighborhood or no other houses in the neighborhood that have ever been approved of the same kind of?
Not for a modification, and the aerial's somewhat deceiving in that there's a house 2 doors to the west, to the left of the subject property that has a fairly deep rear addition. About half of that addition is actually just an open patio cover, which the zoning code allows to extend up to 50% into the required yard. So while it looks like a roofed part of the house, a good portion of that is actually a patio cover beneath.
Okay.
And Chair, if I could just add that, unfortunately, the process for evaluating variances do not have any bearing on previous actions because they're supposed to be taken on an individual basis and evaluated on the merits of the property itself. So if there's something similar, there's always some, differential in the requests, and the circumstances are unique to the properties, so they have to be evaluated on an individual basis.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any more questions. So I wanted to understand, what is the motivation for having setbacks of 20 feet?
Those residential standards were based upon the lot size. So it was basically on a single-family lot pattern. It's to provide private open space, and it's also to provide light and air access to your neighbors. And so basically to create and allow for, other additions, because we allow detached structures to cover at a maximum of 480 square feet as a detached structure. So there's that availability as well. So as to allow for future development as well. Even though this code was written in '69, it allowed those types of things, accessory buildings.
So to me, it seemed like the main motivation for setbacks was really privacy, to ensure that and what I see here is I see that there's just apartments next door behind there. So I don't see that privacy becomes a concern here. So that, to me, that's sort of an extenuating circumstance that might allow us to approve something like this. And then I do see, In fact, I had asked you to pull up this diagram, because if you do look 2 houses to the left, it looks like somebody had built a house within the 15 feet. And you can see that this property also has a porch that extends into that 15 feet already, right? So, but I guess my question is that there, you know, Ms. Chiara said that we don't really look at houses in context with what's happened before or everything, but if you see a development where there's no 2-story houses, we are much less likely to approve a 2-story addition than we would if there's a bunch of 2-story. So I can't agree that you have to look at it completely in isolation, because we do look at, if there's a 2-story right across the street, we're going to approve a project for a 2-story. But if there's nothing there, you know, it sticks out. It's not in keeping with the character of the neighborhood.
Well, those are two different things. I mean, a variance is basically an exception to a development standard, which is a codified regulation. The architectural review is really a discretionary approval related to compatibility. It does not have the same standards. So that's why we're saying it's in the variance, the way that they're written is it really under state law, and it does not have any bearing on what somebody else does, because the circumstances have to be unique to that property.
I see.
And there's required findings for this action.
Okay, that's for a variance. I get it. Okay, so are there, seeing no other questions from commissioners, would the applicant like?
Go.
Oh, you didn't.
He does have that.
Oh, your thing doesn't work. Okay. So I have to look at these lights.
All right.
The lights are gone.
Right there, right there.
Good question. So if they do go back 15 feet, then basically there would not be any room to put an accessory unit in the yard at that point, because they would be excluded and they would have to go like above the garage, for instance, instead, correct?
Well, the property is, with the proposed addition at the maximum of just below 40% building coverage for the lot, so they wouldn't be able to expand out on the
They
lot.
wouldn't be able to expand either way.
I think they can.
They could go on a second
They
floor.
could add an accessory unit on the second floor, as long as it's over the footprint of the ground floor below, because the lot is 6,000 square feet.
Or they could convert existing square footage in the house to an accessory dwelling unit. That's the other option.
So they're at the maximum, so theoretically it would have to be in the interior, and we would allow an
Or
accessory.
a second story. Or a second story not to exceed 50% of the existing square footage.
Okay. And can we put a restriction? Because I know in the past we have put restrictions on a second floor when we've asked them, or we've allowed people to have less than standard setbacks.
I don't think we can restrict that because it's allowed under the code for second stories, but we have used soft language saying that it's a consideration for granting the approval. We have done that. But I don't think it's possible to outright restrict it.
And I understand when we set guidelines, it's because we don't want to have unreasonable burden on our neighbors. But the fact that this backs up to apartment parking, we should be taking that into consideration, because really you're not having the same impact on the light and potentially noise going another 5 feet back than you would if it was just another single-family home.
Certainly. And again, that's one of the findings, and there's a total of 4. And because we can't make all of them, you're required to make all the findings in a positive position. That's why we have to draw the same conclusion, which is to recommend denial or deny. But the commission can certainly craft your own findings based upon that. We'll have to make them in the affirmative, and we can certainly assist you if that's what you're looking at, and you are citing some of those elements, so we can certainly assist you with that if that's the direction of the commission.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, would the applicant like to present your case?
Good evening.
Excuse me, can you wait until we get the timer for your
sure.
presentation? Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jerry Yvette E. Kellner. This is my husband, Jay Kellner. We're the homeowners at 1940 Avenida de las Rosas. It's located in the north side. We are here requesting approval for the 15 feet rear setback for our home addition. I have lived in this neighborhood since the 1970s. And as a family since 2005. We'd like to preserve our home for our kids and stay in Santa Clara with our growing family. Cost of living here is very high, and the only way we could afford to have a more livable home here is to expand our living space. My husband also works from home and needs a designated space that doesn't intrude with our daily living area. Directly behind us is the apartment complex that you're aware of, and there's no negative impact on them whatsoever. Our home is located at a busy T intersection, which my kids can't play safely outside. So that being, we'd like to preserve the backyard, so that's why we only have half our backyard expanded. This design plan we have still gives us a sizable yard, and we want to maintain an open space for them because of the high density plant in the north side, which was just approved. This plan has the least amount of construction and cost for us. We can't move up because it's like double the cost, so the only way we're doing is just an additional 500 square feet. Furthermore, our neighbors that resides at the 1910 was approved with a 15 feet rear setback, and I know it's at a irregular space, but I'd like it to be approved. I don't see why we can't because of that. We've done so much as we can. We've done as much as we can to go forward with this project. We spoke to our neighbors regarding our rear addition. None of them are opposed to our plans to expand. We've provided all the necessary documents that you guys have that substantiates our appeal with signatures and letters. We are seeking approval for permit with this 15 feet rear setback. Thank you for reviewing our plans.
Okay, are there any questions for the applicant? I have a question.
Yes.
In your letter, you state that because that street comes right, tees into your house, and that you've put the 2 bedrooms in the back because of safety for your kids,
Yes.
but you're keeping 1 bedroom and a den in the front.
That's my husband's office, so he
There's a
works from-
bedroom there too.
Yes, that's gonna be his office, and that's gonna be our, like a livable space, like a living room.
The plans show a bedroom, I believe. I see the office there, and then to the left of that is a bedroom, is that correct?
Yeah, that'd be
So there
like
is a bedroom there?
Yeah,
Okay, and so my question is,
it's gonna be our office. We're kind of changing things around still.
okay, so the drawings
But
don't
with
really
the main
reflect
part
what's
is we're
going to be
moving the
built?
girls back to the back. That's our main
Well,
issue here. too.
if you go to the picture of the front of the house, it's very bare here, and I would encourage you to plant a street tree there. So if there were a car that were to sort of miss the light, it would go into the tree instead of the bedrooms. And this street has very few street trees, and it would just add to the aesthetics of the street.
Yeah, we had a palm tree that was removed because it was too close to the home. We were afraid it would fall back towards the girls' bedroom.
It seems like there's space to put a canopy tree,
And
like a street
it
tree.
was ruining our main sewage line. It was crowding in, and we had issues with plumbing. It was backing up to our house. That's why we took away the palm tree. We had a tree there.
But you're still going to have the safety issue of someone running into your husband.
Yeah, but it's not my kids. And he works from home. He could get run over, not my kids. He works at
Would you consider a street tree there?
I would, but maybe a concrete barrier, I don't know, or some fence.
I'm just saying it's
Still
for
in
the
the- we're
safety
still in
of
the
your
process of-
family. Yeah.
Planning stuff. We just need a permit for the back.
Okay, that's the only question I had. Hey, is there
Commissioner Kelly?
any member of the, oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
All right, and you probably heard what staff said, because this does come up a lot when we allow to go past the standard step backs. Is your current plan just to extend out and not planning in the near future to go up? Is that correct?
No, we don't plan on going up.
Okay, all right, because
At all.
that does impact into our thinking, because that is a common concern of neighbors when somebody is expanding back, that there could be potentially in the future be a second story.
Yeah, no plans at all. And besides, I want to grow old in this house, and there's no way I could climb stairs when I'm 90 years old. So, no,
Okay, all right, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, would any member of the public like to comment on this project? Seeing none, is there a, would you like to rebut the public comments? Is there a
Motion to
motion?
close the public hearing.
Okay. Okay, motion to close from Commissioner Casey, seconded by Commissioner Chahal.
In favor?
Do we take a voice vote, or do we vote on screen?
To close the public hearing, you can just do a voice vote.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so, is there any discussion? Commissioner Kelly?
Okay. Since I've been here the longest, I've seen a lot of requests, and every time we've had these requests, we have looked at, are they doing a second story? Because second stories typically cause the most friction between neighbors. And in this case, they are not asking for the second story. And I would further add, we do need to look at the surroundings and the fact that it is backing up to apartment parking indicates it would not be posing an undue burden on the neighboring parcel. So I'm in support of this request because it doesn't seem unreasonable, and I can make the findings based on the circumstances I'm seeing here. Thank you.
Commissioner Chahal?
So I agree with Commissioner Kelly. Keeping in view the circumstances that we need housing and expanding into, and we need a revision of our zoning code, like 20 feet, 15, we are right on the margin. So keeping in view all the things, I'll be more than happy to make a motion to uphold the appeal and allow the minor modification for this property.
Second.
Commissioners,
Wait,
can
wait,
I
wait.
just, you will have to enumerate the 4 findings and tell us what specifically is the rationale for each of those findings. You can't just do it this way. So if you would go through each finding individually, and you can make the comments related to each of those.
So let's see.
So it's
Okay,
on
well, we
page 2.
still have, before we vote, we still have other commissioners that are weighing in. Commissioner Becker?
Okay, so I think Commissioner Chahal and Kelly are clearing this up a little for me on my question. So we're pretty much, I don't want to be like, okay, we're voting like the things where you say, oh, yes on something, but really it means no. So this is, we're saying we have the option to vote yes on this.
Yes.
while you guys are telling us, well, staff is recommending that keep the denial.
No.
Is that what this?
No, all we're saying is if you want to basically uphold the appeal, and you would basically overturn the zoning administrator decision, but you will have to make affirmative findings based on this resolution. So you would just take each item that's on page 2 of 3, it's items A through D, and you'd
Okay.
have to make a positive finding and cite specific issues that relate to that finding.
Okay.
Okay, so just, if you haven't found it yet,
So,
the findings are, there are unusual conditions applying to the land or building which do not apply generally in the same district. Granting of the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights. The granting of the variance shall not, under the circumstances of the particular case, materially affect the health, safety, peace, morals, comfort, general welfare of persons residing or working in the neighborhood. That the granting of the variance is in keeping with the purpose and intent of this title.
So the staff suggests you take each one individually and provide the content for each of the findings. So the first one is that there are unusual conditions relating to the land or building which do not generally apply to the district. So if you give us some specific.
So I would say, as applicant mentioned, is the safety issues related to the geographical location on the T. We can accept that?
Yes.
Okay. So
And I would add that there's apartment buildings behind.
behind.
It's not
it's
single family.
Not detrimental to anything else in the back.
I don't know if that
It's
relates to.
different than a
It's not
standard.
quite what we mean by that, but we could, I think the one that Commissioner Shahal mentioned was sufficient, that it's basically located at a T intersection, so it's.
And I can add that the city needs more housing and their family expanding, so we need.
I would not say that's a finding. I would stop where you mentioned the T intersection.
Okay.
Can we,
I can assist you with some of the other
would
ones.
an unusual condition also be that it's not a two-story proposal?
No.
Okay.
Well, I believe
We're
we
looking at
have,
existing conditions.
I believe we have the
So
condition
I
of
think you've
safety.
covered A.
Yeah, A is covered by the condition of safety. Let's move
mean-
on to B.
Right. So sometimes it has to do with the placement of the house, and so that it creates constraints on how the expansion could occur. That's another avenue for you to consider. But we can move on to, so just basically at the T intersection would direct the addition to create a safe environment. We can use something of that
Okay.
nature. So we've got that one covered. For the expansion.
Commissioner Chahal, would you like to
So other one I would
step
say.
through B, C, and D?
Okay, I can say another one. They want to preserve their backyard on one side for their kids to play around, and that's the reason they cannot go cover their.
Well, they're actually encroaching into the backyard, so they're actually taking away open space. So I would say that that finding doesn't meet the requirement for that, finding B. So just kind of, I think what somebody had mentioned earlier in the discussion, that
It seems,
that the location of the addition is a logical expansion based upon the existing configuration of the interior floor plan.
that's sufficient
would-
to me. That works for me. For C, I believe that we have sufficient petitions from the neighbors saying that this expansion will not impact the general welfare.
Yeah, that conclusion needs to be drawn by the commission, not the neighborhood. So, so I would say, because you had mentioned this into your discussion, that the one-story expansion will not create privacy impacts to the adjacent neighbors. You had mentioned that, citing that, given that there are apartment buildings and the expansion is one-story in design.
Okay, that works.
Okay. You want to try the last one? The
Yeah,
granting the
let's try the
variance
last
is in
one.
keeping with the purposes and intent of this title?
As I had mentioned, was that the intent of the setback is often for privacy reasons, and there's no there is no privacy impacts of this.
It's not the intent of this, of the setback, it's the intent of the modification process, the relief, or the variance.
Okay.
And so that's the one thing they cite, if there are practical difficulties in adhering to a code. So you could say that the allowance for the exception of the zoning standards is based on practical difficulties based upon the orientation or the existing floor plans. So the expansion is basically logical toward the rear of the property.
Is that a justification, or do I need to add something?
The intent of the variance is for practical difficulty. So if they're getting a waiver or relief from the zoning code requirement of a 20-foot rear yard setback, would have to do with that based upon this location of the existing house, basically in the middle of the lot, that it would create, that this is a practical difficulty in expanding the house.
So I would say that the logical expansion would be a two-story that would meet the setback, but the practicalities are that that's very expensive. And that a single story is more amenable to living when you're older.
Okay. I
Okay,
just want to confirm with the city attorney that that would,
I like the findings you came up with. The last one, I'm a little unsure of the purpose and intent of this title, the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. There's about 10 of them in the zoning code, starting with to promote the public health, safety, morals, comfort, and general welfare. But I think the other points that you've already expressed support that. I mean, we can basically repeat what has already been said.
So item D would be basically that the intent is to keep with the zoning code, and by granting the variance, we would be keeping with the zoning code because they would be staying with a one-story plan, and the alternative would be to do a more imposing two-story plan, which would be contrary to what we're trying to achieve, which is to not unduly burden neighboring parcels. So,
I like it.
good, let's go with that.
And while I have the floor, may I finesse the motion?
so I believe that Commissioner Chahal had made a motion.
Made a motion,
we
and
have
these
a
4
second?
findings have been found.
Second.
And
And I
Commissioner
was
Kezi?
requesting that I could help finesse it a little bit. Perhaps the motion that you intended was to sustain the appeal, overrule the zoning administrator's decision, and approve the minor
Approve the minor
modification.
that is correct. Yep.
Okay, so wait for it to come up for a vote.
Vote orally.
Orally, for me.
So commissioners, please register your votes. How do you vote?
Aye.
Has everyone voted?
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly, oh. Okay, passes unanimously.
so that action is final unless there's an appeal to the Office of the City Clerk within 7 calendar days.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, Secretary Becker, could you announce item number 3?
Yes, agenda item number 3, which is item 18-526, the public hearing, actions on Gateway Crossings project located at 1205 Coleman Avenue, including a general plan amendment to Santa Clara Station, very high-density residential, 51 to 100 DU AC, with a minimum commercial FAR of 0.20, creation of a new, very high-density mixed-use zoning district and rezoning to that district. vesting tentative subdivision map, development agreement, environmental impact report, and mitigation monitoring and reporting program.
Okay. So is there a staff presentation?
Yes. Thank you. Chair Jane, members of the commission, so this evening, the request is for the approval of entitlements for 1205 Coleman Avenue, collectively known as the Gateway Crossings Project. And we have a number of actions for consideration for this entitlement. And it includes both, a general plan amendment to the Santa Clara Station to very high density residential with a minimum floor area ratio of commercial of 0.2. There's a zoning code amendment to add a new zoning designation. So this would be a new zoning code that would be added to the existing city code, and it would be for a very high density mixed use zoning designation. This would facilitate the proposal based upon the land use types and building proposals that's incorporated into this development. There is a rezoning request so that if this new zoning designation is supported, there would be a rezoning to this new zoning designation of very high density mixed use. There's also a vesting tentative subdivision map proposed to create additional parcels on the site, as well as common space areas for access. And then there's also a development agreements, which would basically enshrine the entitlement and allow for the development to be phased over time, since it will be over a number of years that the development is constructed if approved. So this is a kind of a high-level review or site plan imagery for you to consider for this proposal. The proposal includes a total build-out of 1,600 multifamily dwelling units. They would be all rental. There's no ownership content with this proposal. There's a total of 15,000 square feet of ground floor supportive retail for these housing units. There is also a full-service hotel, approximately 182,000 square feet. It would feature 225 rooms, 5,500 square foot of food and beverage uses, 4,400 square foot of amenity space, and 6,300 square feet of conference space. And there's also, as you see in the center of the project, oriented towards Coleman Avenue, which is a 2.1 acre park. That park would be developed and turned over to the city, or as far as public use, there would be an easement granted, but it would be maintained in perpetuity by the developer for the life of this project. There's a total of 2,783 parking spaces, and this includes the parking spaces surrounding the park. And there's a new street network, including a new public street, which would be Champions Way, that would reach out to Coleman Avenue and would be in between this project and also the Coleman Highline project, which is adjacent to this proposal. The total site area for the project is 21.4 acres, and 20.4 acres of that area is located in the city of Santa Clara. As you can see from the diagram, there's a small portion with the red line intersecting that last corner, and that is located in the city of San Jose. But there is a proposal just to develop that area with landscaping, and that is permitted under the zoning designation of CIC, and that's commercial and industrial in the city of San Jose. So that proposal would be consistent, but the project would still need to obtain a site development permit from the city of San Jose for that portion of the project site. There were improvements on the site. There was industrial land, and previously in this current zoning is ML, and the improvements have been industrial buildings, office labs, and it was initially occupied by FMC, BAE, and United Defense. And so all those improvements were removed. There has been site remediation, and that took place in 2016 and 17. So the site is currently vacant and it's fenced off. If you've been by it, you've probably seen that. The project site is located in the Santa Clara Station focus area. And this is an area that's been designated in our general plan as a transit-oriented focus area, and it's basically development that would support transit and transit usage. And so it is considered a gateway to the city. It is off Coleman and Brokaw, and it is part of, it's incorporated with the transit station. And right now, we have a number of facilities that we have heavy rail. There is going to be a future BART terminus at this location. There's also multiple lines of VTA. And so this is a prime location for doing high-density development, and it's already been called out in the general plan. But in order to facilitate this project, in order to reorganize the space, there is that proposal to change the general plan to across-the-board land uses that could be swapped out on the parcels that are being proposed for subdivision, and to make sense out of the total square footage proposed and the residential units accounted for in the station area plan. So under this current designation in the general plan, a total of 1,650 residential units are allowed and 2 million square feet of non-residential use. So you can see here, these are the three designations under the general plan on this one project site. There's a very high-density residential, and it allows, you can see, up to 1,042 units. There's a very high residential, and that allows between 146 and 198 units. And then there's regional commercial, which does not require any residential, strictly the commercial usage. And so there is, those three are being proposed for redesignation. And the consideration is to one general plan designation, which is the very high densities for the transit station. And so the land uses both of commercial and residential would be allowed across that entire site. As we mentioned before, that the transit facilities that serve this location are the part of that station area plan. And again, the VTA has multiple bus routes. We have Caltrain, the ACE train at the Capitol Corridor. There's also a pedestrian undercrossing that this developer contributed a significant portion to that happening, so that would allow access to the train station. There is a future BART terminus here. There's a station concourse, a 5-level parking structure proposed, and then the parking facilities for those various transit options. Again, the developer is also the owner and developer for the Coleman Highline project, which is just to the west of this project. And it involves both commercial and there's a stadium. There's also additional street networks through this. And there is connection from this proposed project to this existing project. This project is not fully built out, the Coleman Highline. There's an additional phase going forward. But there will be connectivity both for vehicles and pedestrians, and that's been one of the directions both from Urban Field Studios in reviewing this proposal and direction from city staff to the developer, and those changes were incorporated. This project has been in the pipeline as a preliminary application in 2016. The project application was made the same year. There was community outreach. You see the 3 additional meetings that were taking place. And this is just kind of an overview of the site features. And so the first image on the left is the site and landscape, and you see the amount of green space. So the park in the center is about 2.1 acres, and then the remaining open space on the site is about 2.2 acres. So on-site facilities, but this does include the green belts, the common open space. It does include the podium, amenity space for the residents, but it's a total with the parkland of about 4.3 acres of open space. The middle image, a little hard to read, just shows you the retail and amenity space, which is ringing all of the buildings. So they're primarily residential, and then there's basically a tower of residential, and there's a tower that we'll see the elevations shortly, and the hotel. And then there would be commercial space ringing all of those areas, and it will be neighborhood serving. The last image shows the public and private open space in the green and blue areas. So there are a number of spaces available to residents and also visitors to that site, and we do anticipate that patrons and users of the transit station would also frequent these facilities as well as residents. So that's why we're looking for the neighborhood serving retail. This is just an enlarged view, and as you can see, you might not be able to see it. On the corners of these buildings, we put the heights. So some of them are 7 floors, 6 floors. The two, the hotel, let's see here, the hotel at the top of the screen, and there's another, Josh, there's, well, we'll go to the towers. I'm sorry. I can't see as well here, sorry. So there's a tower, there's one tower, and then the hotel. Those would be approximately 13 stories, and if you see it in your plan set, total heights are roughly between 202 and 203 feet, but they're subject to FAA clearance and regulation. But so far, it looks like those heights are feasible. And this is some of the elevations, and the architect is here to provide additional imagery for these designs. So there is mid-rise and some high-rise proposals for the residential, and on this left you see the locations for these residential towers and mid-rise buildings. And again, these are the various sites on the site plan that shows the residential towers. And the image on the top is the hotel, and the other one is, the lower one is the residential tower that's proposed. So again, just to recap, we are requesting that the Planning Commission recommend City Council approval for the project. There's a number of actions you'll need to take if you do support this proposal. One would be to certify the environmental impact report, adopt the CEQA findings, and a statement of overriding considerations, since there are some significant unavoidable impacts. There is also a mitigation monitoring and reporting program that would be part of this proposal. There's also a request to adopt General Plan Amendment number 87 from regional commercial, high-density residential, and very high-density residential to very high residential with a minimum commercial FAR, floor area ratio, of 0.2. An amendment to the general plan map to reflect this change of the focus area to, and also a general plan change and revision to the climate action plan, since this area isn't accounted for currently to incorporate transit demand measures. We would ask that that be amended to require that for the project. There's also the rezoning proposal from light industrial to high density mixed use, which would be the new zoning code designation we are requesting approval for, and have a resolution for this as well. And the total project area would incorporate up to 1,600 dwelling units and 182,000 square foot full service retail, 15,000 square foot of supporting retail, the park and open space, and other on-site infrastructure and amenities as is described in your packet. And then there would also be a request for a vesting tentative subdivision map to create 6 mixed-use parcels and 6 common lots for site access and circulation. And there would also be a request to adopt an ordinance to approve a development agreement with the terms and conditions for this development proposal. And I will conclude there and answer any questions that you may have. And just to mention that the environmental consultants are here to answer any questions related to, and our traffic engineer is here as well to answer questions related to traffic improvements and circulation, anything of that nature.
Do commissioners have any questions of staff? Commissioner Becker.
So in the first slide, it says this is gateway to the city and gateway crossings. My question I have is about, pretty much about traffic. I went out there today about 5 o'clock. It's a disaster. I mean, we have traffic backing up all the way towards De La Cruz, and then we have traffic backing up on the interchange, as well as Brokaw Road. Many have asked questions about this as what are the solutions to providing more road options? I've mentioned this during the study session that, you know, Brokaw Road used to connect with Benton, it used to go through before. So why aren't we looking at options and viability of putting roads through to alleviate traffic in that area? Because if we're gonna add 1,600 residential units, 15,000 square feet of retail, where is everybody gonna drive? Because I see a line backing up from, if you go down, if you're on Coleman, you're trying to make a left turn onto Brokaw, trying to get to Costco, let's say about 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, even in the evening, that it's backing up all the way into the median. So I'm wondering, is there any major plans that we're looking at down the road to really retrofit this area road-wise? Because, I mean, I think it needs some more access points. I think if we put Benton through like it used to be in the old days, because from what I heard was the reason why that they closed Benton down to Brokaw was because that they put the interchange in. Now we pretty much need another access point, because if this is called Gateway Crossings, don't you think it would be more appropriate to have that as an access point to Santa Clara? I mean, Benton going through, I mean, I think this would be an appropriate avenue to take, mainly because that area gets pretty bad about 5 o'clock, 1 o'clock. I mean, it's a disaster. I mean, is there any future plans to really retrofit these roads over here?
Commissioner Becker, so upon your question regarding potential vehicular crossing, which would be over railroad tracks, correct? But you brought this up at the study session previously.
Yeah.
So I actually spoke to this with other staff, our director, as well as city manager's office. And actually the previous Santa Clara station plan, which did not get fully adopted, but was actually prepared by Diet and Bhatia, did explore a vehicular connection. That was not determined to be feasible from a cost standpoint. From an engineering standpoint, actually boring and creating like a tunnel underneath the railroad tracks was, at the time, which is maybe 10 to 15 years ago when that plan was presented, really roughly estimated at $60 million, and today probably several $100 million. So it is not something that we can take lightly. It's a wonderful idea, and do want to emphasize there's a pedestrian connection that was provided. Not the same, I understand, as a vehicular connection, but I did want to bring to the Commission's attention that that specific concept was analyzed previously and was not determined to be feasible.
So
Commissioner Becker, excuse me, but we also have our traffic engineer, and he and I had this conversation just earlier today. So I think from him, he can actually explain the technicalities involved and what improvements are being applied to this project. But you might benefit from hearing his explanation of this before we go further.
okay.
So
Commissioner Kelly.
Okay, just to piggyback on that, because I know we had touched on it at the study session. But I would hopefully like to see both San Jose and Santa Clara maybe charge a fee to have a long-term plan to connect the station for a quick, direct shuttle to the airport, because we're going to need it. And, you know, I'd like to hear what plan there is to get people from the BART station to the airport, because that's my biggest concern. And if we can charge a fee in the development that goes in and around there, that will, if it's not under, if we just go over, and we can share the cost with the parcels within mile radius of that, or half-mile radius, whatever it is. I think all the businesses would benefit from a more direct way to get from the train station to the airport. Okay. So if staff, or I guess the traffic engineer could touch on that.
Yeah, Dennis Ng is, maybe perhaps he could share the overview first, and then we can go from there.
Good evening, Commissioners. Dennis Ng, City Traffic Engineer.
With the pointer.
So Planning Manager Brio is correct in that the original Santa Clara Station Area Plan did look at a undercrossing, crossing from this project site, an extension of Champions Way across and connecting to El Camino, but that was not carried forward into the general plan at that time due to cost implications and engineering. What you currently, on the Brokaw extension area underneath the railroad tracks, there's a very large storm drain and sewer utility line, and also in the future, the BART station is planned to be at grade at this portion. So that crosses this, the Brokaw extension area and then goes into their maintenance area. And then there will be the pedestrian undercrossing will be connecting into the BART station because it's an electrified system. There won't be an at-grade connection. It'll have to go underneath and then come up like all the other BART stations, or go up and come down, similar to what happens in San Francisco or East Bay, or what's happening right now in Milpitas. And then to the point of the, to Commissioner Kelly's question about I've lost my train of thought now.
Okay. There's two things
connection
that I was wondering about. Since we can't go under, could we go over? And how are we going to get people from the BART station to the airport?
Yes. So as part of the old Measure A tax measure that started BART coming down into Silicon Valley, there was an item in there to look at a airport people mover or a shuttle program connection from Santa Clara BART station to Santa Clara station to the airport. That study is currently being scoped out, and VTA will be starting that study soon. In addition, as part of this development, the developer has agreed to contribute funding towards a local transit study that staff has been contemplating and working towards also. So that'll look at connecting residential areas, job centers, and retail areas, major origins and destinations within Santa Clara, and creating a local shuttle system that will connect all of that. So we anticipate that study starting in about 2 years, I think.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, I have a bunch of questions. This new designation has 100 units per acre, and the applicant is only going to 74. So since the application is for 1,600 units, and presumably the EIR was done with 1,600 units, is there any allowance for the applicant to go? They're doing 2 phases of development to make the second phase at a higher density than 74. I mean, can we go to more than 1,600 units in the total development, given that the EIR was written with 1,600 in it?
The proposal is only the 1,600, so do you want?
Well, I mean, just briefly, the EIR studied a 1,600 dwelling unit development. If the developer came in X number of years from now and said, you know what, I want to go up to 1,800 now, then we'd simply do whatever additional environmental review would be required at that time. It might be as simple as an addendum. It might be a more formal, lengthier environmental document, a negative declaration, something like that. It might be able to just be built under the existing document. But the
Well,
current document only considers 1,600 dwelling units, so any significant deviation from that will at least require an addendum, probably.
And then, given that we're doing a development agreement, does that lock us in to any fixed
We'd need to
numbers?
modify the DA probably to allow for the additional units.
Is there any mechanism for us to grant a higher density? Or that would trigger a bunch of other redos of documents?
It would be hard to not reopen the entitlements. I mean, they'd be able to build their 1,600 dwelling units no matter what. If they came in later and wanted an additional 200, we couldn't take away their right to build the 1,600 by nature of them applying for an additional 200.
Correct.
But there's no way to guarantee that they'd be granted that additional 200. We couldn't do it today because the environmental doesn't contemplate it.
Correct, I understand. Okay. Now, I have a problem with the .2 FAR, and the reason is that the they're meeting at .2 FAR, but that includes 6,300 square feet for a conference room, which really doesn't meet our goal of trying to get, I guess it's city goal 5.8.5 P2, required development to offer on-site services to reduce daytime trips. So it seems to me that putting the conference room space, basically all of the commercial is basically within the hotel. And so we're not really providing restaurants and other things that are outside of the hotel to try to reduce trips.
No, there is, all of the buildings have, if we go back to that image, they do have, you see the center one, the retail, all those edges that are like pink and orange, all of those spaces have, all the buildings are rung by retail, ground floor retail. So
My
that,
reading
so there's
of it was that the bulk of the space was all within the hotel. And maybe I'll ask the applicant.
Approximately 15,000, I think it is not affiliated with the hotel. So I think we have about 180-some thousand affiliate, total square footage of the hotel.
Right.
And it lists off a lot of ancillary uses, such as conference room.
Right.
But there's about 15,000 that's neighborhood supporting retail.
15,000, okay.
And again, there is connectivity to the other developments through the backside of the development. So there's that Coleman High Line, and there's the retail there. So that's why there's less on this site, because there is options for pedestrian access and bike and vehicle access to those other developments.
Okay. My third question is related to affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
So this development has a 10% affordable housing requirement.
Yes.
But the developer is allowed to make half of that off-site, and
No.
they're...
It's
That's what
not,
it-
it's not half off-site. It would be 50% of it on-site and up to half of the requirements basically to pay a fee.
That's what I'm saying, in lieu, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So 50% could be in lieu. So the rate of that in lieu fee is $6.67
A
per
square
square
foot,
foot.
right.
Now, the construction costs are, what I've heard, it's $500 a square foot in the Bay Area.
For an affordable unit, not necessarily for
Well, for any
private, yeah.
construction. And so this represents 1% of the cost of what the construction is. Now, I looked at rental rates, and you know, our affordable is based on AMI.
Right.
So the thing is that if a family of four were at 100% AMI, they would be paying $2,650 a month rent. Now, the Nantucket apartments next door are charging $2,979 to $3,100 per month rent, which is $2,650 is much less than 1% break. So the fact that they're getting an in lieu fee of just $6.67, of course they're going to take the in lieu, because to provide the affordable housing would be more expensive. They'd take a much bigger loss on that. So it just doesn't make sense for us to let them get away with allowing a half of the, I mean, we're so desperate for affordable housing. And to allow them to basically have half of it be off-site for a pittance just doesn't make sense to me. It's 1% of the cost of construction.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. I just do want to point out, though, that basically the highest level would be 80% AMI, it would not be 100%, and that they do have to provide a portion of a low and very low. So there will be an affordable housing agreement that has to be done separately, so that those units are still negotiated. So they would have a deeper cut than the average rent than what you were mentioning.
Okay, just,
But the
it
other
just
point
still
about the
seems like,
square footage, yes,
seems like
there's no way to.
there's no incentive for them to put those extra units on site because it's so cheap to put them off site, and just 1% extra cost to put
And
it
that is a
off-site.
feature of the development agreement because there are trade-offs
we-
for that.
we
So
can-
there
we can
certainly
renegotiate
those
the development
recommendations
agreement
can
right
be
now. Yes.
referred to the city council if that's the pleasure of the commission.
I do want to put a little bit more context, and I completely hear Chair Jane's comments. I just want to remind the commission that this application was applied for prior to our affordable housing ordinance. So recognizing they have a DA, but I just wanted to provide some context for the regulatory environment that they're in which they've applied prior to our ordinance taking effect. So this is something that the 10% is something that would be mandated today for any application that was submitted, but these individuals, I'm sorry, 15%, but they were a part of the pipeline prior to the adoption of the ordinance.
But given that
yeah,
it's a
so-
DA,
so for
given that
the-
it's a DA, we could basically ask whatever we want.
That is true, but again, and so right now, because it's an apartment proposal, there's not any obligation under the current regulations for affordable housing, so.
Okay, and then I believe that the applicant is going to maintain the park.
Yes.
And what level of maintenance can we require for that park? That, I think in a previous proposal, we said it should be maintained at the equivalent level to city parks.
Yes, that's the standard language that's incorporated into those agreements.
Okay, I didn't see it there.
Okay, that agreement has to be executed still, so, but.
Okay, well, we can add that as a condition. Okay. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you. Sorry. Commissioner Chaw.
So I'll continue the discussion with the Chair, Serge Jane. I was reserving it for the applicant, but now that we started it, I wanna. So that development agreement clause like 4.5B, where we are only asking them for a 50% of the affordability and 50% in lieu fees. The in lieu fee are, I think, less than 500K. And anybody developing in this city will take that, not giving that one. So I would strongly recommend that we remove that clause and let all the 10% should be affordable. And that would be my first recommendation in the development agreement, modify the development agreement so that we can remove the in lieu fee clause and let all the 10% affordability housing be the component on the site, on site. And as Chair Serge mentioned, we are doing a development agreement, and there are multiple reasons we can negotiate this thing. As per our existing general plan, the highest density they are getting is 758 to 1279 units. And we are modifying our general plan to raise that to 1,600 units. So we are giving them additional 322 units on this development. And that should be the one more reason we should negotiate more affordable housing. And we are just asking for affordable housing. It's not that we are asking some more favors on that. It's the affordable housing. They will get rent out of it. It's not that they're not getting rent out of it, but it is really dire need of the community to have affordable housing. So I was trying to even ask for more affordable housing than 10% because we are giving them additional 322 units. And out of that 322, we're only asking for 160. And if we do that development clause, that 50% of that in lieu, we are not getting basically anything out of that 322. So I would say even better, we should ask for more affordability component out of that 322 units, maybe 15% of in total. Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base on the public transit aspect of it. If I heard correctly, it's like a 2-year deal till we get any kind of information on what kind of public transit's going to be going on. Is that correct? Did I mishear that?
My understanding.
You're talking about
and-
public transit and having shuttles go back and forth to get people to where they need to go. If I remember hearing correctly, or if I heard it correctly, there's like 2 years from now is when we're going to get that little impact report or whatever that's called. Sorry if I don't have the terminology correct.
No, staff will be initiating a study in about 2 years to look at local shuttle programs within Santa Clara to
So
connect.
the study
Orchard.
doesn't even start until 2 years from now.
We'll start the study in 2 years.
Okay.
And then it's not, it won't be, it could be run by VTA, it could be run by the city. It hasn't been determined yet at that point. It's just looking at the feasibility of it and then what would make sense.
Okay. Is it not, does it not make sense to have a study like that done before we even move forward with the project? I mean, shouldn't that be like the first thing on our list? Like what kind of public transit the impact will, listen, I'm new here, so forgive me if I'm asking the question incorrectly, but it would be my train of thought that we would need to know how to get these people around before they move in.
Well, there will be a wealth of transit options and
But there isn't.
other mobility options at the same time.
Currently,
right now,
there's not, though, right?
Currently, there is an
Currently,
undercross.
like Commissioner Becker said, it's pretty crowded over there. Just to go get something from Comcast.
If I can just let the traffic engineer respond.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
So in the roadway portion, the project will be widening Coleman Avenue. So then that'll widen the roadway to 3 lanes, 6 lanes wide. So then it'll match up with San Jose's portion. So that'll relieve a significant bottleneck in front of the project site. At the same time, VTA, the city, and the applicant have jointly constructed a pedestrian undercrossing underneath the railroad tracks, which will connect the project site to the El Camino site for pedestrians and bicyclists. On the other side of El Camino, there is the line 522 and the line 22, which is VTA's highest ridership and the most plentiful ridership for bus service up and down El Camino that'll go down to downtown San Jose all the way up to Palo Alto. In addition, we are looking at, as part of the El Camino specific plan, looking at options for bicycle lanes along El Camino. The applicant is helping us with bicycle lanes along Coleman also, and looking at not widening, but restriping the tri-level to provide wider shoulders for bicyclists so that they can traverse the area also, in addition to transportation improvements in the area.
Okay, when you talk about transportation impact improvement, the line 522 and the line 22 has been the same since I was in high school in 1992. It hasn't changed. It's gone from San Jose to Palo Alto the whole time. I used to spend weekends on it just to get out of the house. Sure. So with the amount of people that we are projecting to enter our little city, it would behoove us to move quicker with some sort of public transportation solution. Is that?
So that's why we've been working with Caltrain is also looking at electrification along the Caltrain corridor. High-speed rail will eventually come to this area, but there are lots of transportation options that are being worked on, and it just takes a little bit of time to conduct the study and then for it to come into fruition.
Okay, and just to make sure I understand everything, because like I said, I'm new.
Yeah, you're new.
So there might be stuff I don't know, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the 522 has been improved quite a bit. It's actually been sped up. Yeah, it's very fast now.
They have an express now.
Anyway.
I always take the 22, I don't skip
I
the...
would let's go to some other questions, and we'll come back to you. Is
Okay,
that
no problem. Thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner Becker.
Okay, so one I really was thinking about, I didn't cover earlier, was public safety. Do we know what the response times would be for if there's an emergency in this development? How the response time would be from going from the police station and the fire department through the roundabout, or not through the roundabout, through the interchange of Coleman and all the way to that location? What the response time would be versus if you just had a direct line across the tracks?
I'm going to defer this to the environmental consultant, but yeah, we do, the barometer we use is the response time, and it has to stay the same before we consider a significant impact. So, Christy, do you want to? Christy Weiss is going to, with David J. Powers, is going to respond to that.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christy Weiss. I'm with David J. Powers and Associates, and we were hired to assist the city in preparing the EIR for the project. And when we coordinated with the city, the fire department, the police department about the project, they said that they would have adequate response times to the site and that no new facilities would be required to serve the project. So our analysis is a little bit different than your question, where our baseline is their existing service conditions and whether or not they can provide that within their goal and standard. And our analysis focuses on if they need an additional station, then we need to evaluate the environmental impacts. So that need was not identified.
Well, I'm not saying that we need to add another station. I'm saying that you got, okay, for example, this is a part of Santa Clara that's kind of forgotten, okay? It's right now still forgotten. So we're gonna have a crossing like where the Coleman interchanges, that the police station is literally on the other side of the railroad tracks. You got a fire station right down the street. Both of that, most likely that police and that fire station will be using that interchange to get over to that other side. So my thing is, if this disaster or whatever ends up happening at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or 4 o'clock, they're gonna have an issue getting across over that way versus if you went through Benton and Brokaw. That's the reason why I'm really getting on that point of an undercrossing, overcrossing, because this is a public safety issue. If we're gonna have a 13-story building and multiple towers and 1,600 residential units, I think this would be an appropriate time to start saying that maybe we need to have more access points for public safety.
Per CEQA, we really have to have thresholds of impact and significance. What Ms. Weiss has explained to you is how we evaluate thresholds of significance and whether or not levels or standards of service from police or fire would not be adequate or would somehow need to be modified. And what we've learned from police and fire through this EIR process is that the addition of this project would allow for no degraded service that would be significant. So your question, Commissioner Becker, would additional streets make it faster? Of course, additional streets would make everyone be able to go faster, but the lens in which we're kind of looking at from a CEQA standpoint, impact, we do have thresholds of significance that we're trying to apply to all projects and that we do from the framework of CEQA.
It also seems to me that presumably, since Avaya Stadium is there and this other big Highline project, that probably some of this jurisdiction might be covered by San Jose. So, okay, Commissioner Ikezi.
Thank you. So the TDM requirement for this project is the same as Tasman East, 20% total, half of which would be required through the implementation of a TDM program, right? That's what the council ended up approving last night for the Tasman East. But this project is going to be close to BART, so I think it's going to be. I think we can do more TDM. But my question is, we're not going to have BART for several years. Other public transportation is going to be available over time. So instead of having a TDM requirement that kicks in immediately, is it possible to define an escalating TDM over a certain number of years? Is that something that we can contemplate?
Yes, you could, definitely.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so.
I
seeing-
just want to remind the commission that the applicant still has their presentation
I know.
to do. Okay.
I'm saying, seeing that there's no other
Right.
questions for staff, would the applicant like to present?
Let me test drive this clicker real quick to make sure I know. There we go. All right.
Have the timer set?
Um,
Good evening. My name is Josh Rupert. I am the project developer for Hunter Storm. Joining me this evening are our two principals, Deke Hunter, Ed Storm. As mentioned previously, we also have our architect of record, Ken Nillmeyer from MVE, who's here to discuss any questions you may have or residents have on the architecture, as well as the Gazzardo Partnership and Gary Lehman, who is our landscape architect, who is involved with this project. What are we going to talk about in our 9 minutes and 28 seconds? We're going to talk about the project history, which was extensive. You got a little bit of that during the planning discussion from staff, but I don't think you got the full sort of picture, which I'll go into a little bit more. We'll talk about how we got to our current site plan and design. And then I'll turn it over to our principal, Deke Hunter, who will speak to municipal benefits and project contributions. So you may be asking, and I know others have, what is Gateway Crossings? Gateway Crossings, in our mind, is the missing residential component to a much larger transit village that's bookended by the Coleman Landings to the south and the Costco Center to the north. It was brought up that we're developing 1.5 million square feet of office in our Coleman Highline project, and it currently has an entertainment component with Avaya Stadium. So the piece that's missing, and I think we can all agree that Santa Clara needs it, is residential. So the project history, we started this project, we actually purchased this property over 12 years ago, and we started this project really sort of brainstorming at that time. We presented to the city, and I'll show you a site plan from December of 2015, which coincided with our January 2016 pre-application, where we actually only wanted 1,000 units, okay? And through the discussions that we had with city staff and with the residents during our 3 residential meetings, we adjusted to initially 1,380 units, which is the phase 1 alternative to our EIR. And then ultimately, based on feedback we additionally received, as well as from the city's architectural consultant, we've gone up to the 1,600 units, expanded our park and some of these other items. This is what Gateway Crossings was before it was Gateway Crossings, before it was the iconic gateway into Santa Clara. It was 1,000 units. It was 1,000 units. That's what we presented. 3 relatively large buildings, surface parking. You can see that there's a central park. Through the discussions that we then had with city staff, as well as the residents, we went to 1,380 units. So the biggest changes in this were we grew from 3 residential buildings to 4. We still had the neighborhood park component centrally, but we also added the full-service hotel to meet our 0.2 FAR component, which we discussed previously. And part of the reason why we agreed to that was because there were studies done by retail consultants and economic consultants commissioned by both ourselves and the city that agreed that what we're providing from retail perspective as a transit village is more than substantial for what we're bringing to the table. This is what we're bringing now. 1,600 units that'll be phased in 2 phases. Phase 1 consists of approximately 716 units, and it will be essentially buildings 1 and 2. We'll also be developing the public park that we discussed earlier will be dedicated in fee to the city, but maintained by us. It will also include all of the private streets east of buildings 3 and 4, including some of the improvements that the traffic engineer discussed, to including extending and improving Brokaw Road, including all the landscaping back of curb, south of our site, or west of our site, depending on how you look at it, all the way to the VTA tunnel. We are widening Coleman on the going southbound to include a third lane. The bicycle paths was talked about. What wasn't talked about is that we also agreed to an additional signalized intersection at the Brokaw intersection with Costco. So where the traffic is now backing up, we're adding a signalized intersection there to hopefully help alleviate some of those concerns. We also are providing some improvements to the signalized intersection at Coleman and Brokaw intersection. Who are we? We are catered to an active lifestyle, which is ultimately the demographic of Silicon Valley. We'll have substantial bicycle parking, including approximately 550 Type 1, which will be in a locker or in a room secured in each building. We'll have 6% will be EV chargers. Transportation demand management was discussed. These are some examples that we're considering as part of our TDM when that ultimately gets finalized. Our current mix of 1,600 units is primarily made up of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom, approximately 75%, and we've really focused on amenities. We haven't programmed the park because that comes as part of the Parks and Recreation portions moving forward, but we have ideas as to what we believe the park will be. Barbecue areas, outdoor fitness, child's play area. These are some things that the Parks and Recreation Department will program, and ourselves and residential feedback will program. Each one of our buildings has a pool, a fitness center, and some ancillary amenity spaces that was discussed by Gloria. And now I'll turn it over to Deke, who will speak to the municipal benefits.
Good evening, everybody. I already met during the study session. My name is Deke Hunter. I'm the principal. Thank you, Josh. I was wondering if I was going to get 3 or 4 minutes. As you know, when you do a project of this density, it's come on for a long time. So we developed originally what we call University Station, the other side, which is the first transit-oriented development in Santa Clara. And we developed this site, specifically acquired this site for transit-oriented development. So as we worked on the specific plan for Santa Clara, you can see there is a lot of back and forth. You know, we went up from 1,000 to 14 to 1,600 units. And we came on at a time when there wasn't a BMR component. So we are trying to bridge all these demands for more density, for more BMR, for more transit. This is actually probably the most transit-rich site in all of Santa Clara, unquestionably. And that's why we like it, from intermodal to train to ACE train, et cetera. It is a challenge trying to balance everybody's priorities, but what you get when you add these densities, it does afford us to have more parks. You also have a lot of other people that are trying to reach for their programs too. And as you start to scale for these bigger projects to meet transit-oriented demand, the Parks and Rec has been a big component. Our Park and Rec component is over $17 million just for this 2 pieces. So it's interesting as you try to balance that against maybe a specific pet project as relates to changing streets, or you look at other transit opportunities or against BMR. We're open to it. That's why the city attorney made a good point. If you change densities while we're in the middle of this project, we can look to it. But think about how much time us, the community, the city has worked on this project. So we don't want to stop now. We've come up, we're taking all but 50 units of the entire residential piece. We've met that demand. We kicked off the transit connection. So that's an $11 million tunnel just to connect this part of forgotten Santa Clara to the other side of Santa Clara. And we funded over half that project privately. That's our commitment to this site on both sides of the street. So as we get down to around the edges, there are important issues around the edges. We've tried to offer up something that wasn't asked for us on the BMR, but if there's something more, we get it. We've been here for 60 years. I feel like I'm getting all 60 of those years tonight, but we understand that part of the trade-off. So my office is across the street. We develop down the street. So as we go back and forth, we'll hear some of your concerns tonight. And maybe after we hear some more from the community, we'll see if we can measure some of those priorities as we kind of get to a final point of making a decision. So with that, I'll suspend the rest of my minute and a half and allow the public hearing to continue. Unless there's questions in the moment.
Yeah, are there questions? For some reason, my machine has locked up and I can't see the speakers anymore. Like the keyboard has taken over. Sorry.
So I'll reiterate, staff made up a good question. Our architect is here, and so if maybe during the Q&A you want him to focus on some things, we thought that'd be worthwhile to split that out from my presentation.
So while we're waiting for this, we do have lights, so please use the lights. So Commissioner Kelly.
Okay. All right. With a project like this, I would like to see at least 10% of the units to be moderately priced so workers in the area can live there and make use of BART. Because I think when you're looking at a transit-oriented development, you want people to be able to live close to transportation. That's alternative than to getting into your car. And I understand it's very difficult for a developer to plan, and originally we weren't requiring anything. Now we do have, we're going up to 15%. But at the very minimum, I would like a commitment from you to at least 10% to being moderate price units so workers in the area can make use of this and mass transit. Okay, now I don't know if that's in your plan or in your budget, how you forecast what it would cost, but I would just like to hear from you what you think would be possible, because too many of the developers come in front of us and then they build the affordable housing component someplace else.
What you're asking for is a very reasonable ask, and what we see in community to community. It is hard on a project like this, in which we thought we started from 0 and now we're at 10%, and now we were at 10%, and the ordinance afforded us to do half of that off-site. I'm hearing that loudly and clearly. So maybe after we get through everybody's input, instead of maybe me trying to solve that one issue right now, is let me get everybody else's input, we'll get some community input, and then maybe we'll bake that cake together here in about 5, 10, 15 minutes.
That would be great, because we're willing to go higher density because it is supposed to be a transit-oriented, or at least I am, project. But we would like to see workers be a component of the project.
So you can tell by my commitment from all the way down in Newhall to this site that I'm committed to this area. And you can see from both this project and 20 years ago, the project on the other side, I could not agree more with you that transit does make the difference when it comes to providing the best type of affordable housing. I agree with you 100%. Does that change my opinion on the math? I don't know. But what you're asking for, I agree with you 100% as far as what that does principally for our community and for the people that work in our community, for our quality of life and maximizing what little free time we all have as a community these days.
Okay. And the quality of the project, because the whole idea of having a transit-oriented project is to not just have affluent people, tech workers, but also the workers that do the average day-to-day job.
I agree with you 100%. I live in a built environment, and while we are, all of us are accommodating a technology driver that we all live around, I support and I cherish the people that do the work on our projects, and somebody picks up a hammer and somebody picks up a backhoe, and those men and women do make the difference for the community we live in. And you're right, this is the type of housing, the quality of housing that we want everybody to afford, not just one segment of the population.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Becker.
So you said on
Yours is the hardest one for me.
the expansion, so you said on Brokaw, because right now Brokaw only has the 2 lanes, and he has the middle lane. Then you have Coleman, which has the 2 lanes right now from the interchange all the way up until Brokaw, and after that it goes back to 3. So you guys are saying that they're going to do 3 lanes in Coleman, but also still have a right turn lane for the Costco and for the development, for your development too. So there's 3 lanes there, but on the Brokaw one, are you putting 4 lanes, or are you putting, how many lanes are going onto the Brokaw side? Because right now it's only 2.
So I'll give you the exact, give me 1 second.
Yeah,
I'll give
no
you the
problem,
exact
no
answer.
problem.
So, but both for our property in Santa Clara going into San Jose, we are widening both sides of the street by a lane with every segment. So you saw us up by Phase 1 in Avaya. We've already grown.
Saw that.
Coleman, we're building the Roku headquarters of the new buildings going up, and now we're adding 2 more lanes, 1 on each side. And as we come into what we call Tranche 2, which is the remainder, and then into Santa Clara, we continue to expand Coleman. The hardest part we have is, and it's not your fault, it's not my fault, or vice versa, we have a giant Costco with 1 driveway, which if we were all doing something all over again, like the new Costco we just built in South San Jose, nobody builds a Costco with 1 driveway. Yeah. But that's what we have, and that's what we're all here to solve tonight. So, yeah, so we expand Brokaw from 2 to 3 lanes, adding a new intersection, so those cars can get right in, and we don't stuff everybody up coming out. That's broken, but that's how we fix that broken condition. So we expand Brokaw by an additional lane.
3 lanes, okay. Just curiosity in that respect of, I mean, I've turned onto that road going in there. So if we add a stoplight at the intersection where Costco is there gonna be is there gonna be like a little indent for a right turn lane so it doesn't have any delays backing everybody up all the way to Brokaw? Because right now we're seeing people backing up into backing up into Coleman, trying to turn left into Brokaw, and it's going that way. So I'm wondering if we put a stoplight and everyone's trying to get maybe, let's say, down to the BART station, and that light's red, are they gonna keep backing up out into Coleman and stopping traffic? Is it gonna be worse than it is now?
We're currently planning for a 13 to 18-foot travel lane going that direction, which obviously would be used to turn right into the Costco.
Okay.
There's also a through lane that would allow a left turn into our project
And then
going that direction,
okay.
Which is west. And then there would be another, going east, there would be another travel lane that we've currently got planned at 10 feet. Okay. And a bike lane going that direction. Bike lanes going both directions.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Chahal.
Okay. First of all, I really thank you for being very positive to listening to us and incorporating some of our requests. That's a good sign. Like,
thank you.
And one of the, as I will reiterate that, like we would, although came up with the mind that we want a 15% affordable housing, but with your positive attitude, I'm okay with 10% as long as you keep all 10% over there. Like, we want to really eliminate the 5% in lieu. 5% in lieu is basically no housing. Let me put it that way. That's the amount of development fees you're paying for park and other stuff that's under $500,000 is nothing. So that's basically a no-no for that matter. So let's please consider that we should have 10%, all of it over there, 10% affordable component within the complex.
Yeah. I'm listening. I'm going to wait to make sure there's not some other things like a heliport or submarine station or something else that I have to.
And one other thing I want to point out, which I raised even during the study session, I know this, the location of this complex is pretty close to the businesses in San Jose, like all the office complexes in San Jose. I'm trying to protect the working class who are working in Santa Clara. Recently, we had a development in Palo Alto, and they did give a preference to renters who are working in the city of Palo Alto. Or they gave another parameter within half a mile. But if I give you half a mile, then we lose the point of what I want to make. Like, so can we work out something like that, that we give preference to workers who are working in Santa Clara on when we are allocating this, renting these units?
Help me out, because I
Yeah,
think you
I can
administer the
respond to that.
program.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
You
under the affordable housing agreement, actually, the city does hire the staff that actually does the application screening. And there has been for some time, there is, the preference is for live and work in Santa Clara. Next is then work or live, either one. So if it's both, you get the highest priority. So if you live and work in Santa Clara, you're the first up. If you then live or work one or the other, then you're the next tier. So it is already geared towards Santa Clara residents.
Oh, okay. No, when you said live and work, so
They
you will
get
live in
top
this
priority.
complex?
No, if you live in Santa Clara somewhere.
Oh, currently living and
Yeah.
they want to move to this place?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So even if you're not in an affordable housing unit, just if you live and work in Santa Clara, you get the first priority. Then the next tier is live or work.
Okay.
I forget, it might be one or the other, but
And that would only be applicable to the affordable component of it, not to the other
yes,
one?
not all the other, not all
Oh,
the other units, just
okay.
the affordable units.
Okay. I think the other one, Palo Alto was a flat preference to others.
for
Of
all
course,
the
I
units?
would,
Okay.
affordable, if we can cover that thing, that's good, but if we can.
That is a standard
Yes.
screening and part of the affordable housing agreement.
Okay. If we can expand that to something more than that, like for people working in Santa Clara beyond affordable, I would like to see that.
So I have to defer that
If
to
we
the
can have
attorney
some
to answer that.
technical.
Well, I'm comfortable with our current program. The question of whether we can impose employee or resident preferences on a broader scale is tricky because it risks violating federal housing law the more people that are affected. If one particular racial group is affected in a way, if there are more people of one particular group that get this benefit than another, then we run the risk of violating federal fair housing laws. So I can't draw an exact line for you on, I haven't done a demographic study of the city to figure out what we could impose. I would say I am comfortable with our current program. I don't know how much more than that we could impose and couldn't give you an answer without some sort of demographic study. But as Ms. Shar said, we already do have this preference in our affordable housing program.
So would that be a part of development agreement or that's part of the affordability we are managing?
It's part of the AHA, the Affordable Housing Agreement. So that's a standard practice that the city uses. It's built into that agreement. And so the independent company that screens the affordable housing applications has that criteria for placing those families or people into those units.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I have some questions. There were possibly 15,000 square feet of retail amenities that are not included within the hotel. What kind of amenities are you thinking of?
These days, retail really has really morphed into a lot of, food and beverage. So food and beverage would probably be a big part of it. Fitness is a big part of it. Med spa is another big part of it, where people have, where they have concierge doctors or they have other medical services that they're able to use their health programs for. It's not going to be, the dressmaker and the hat maker. That's not going to exist in this setup here. I mean, we would welcome it, but I haven't been able to find them even for my most premier locations. So I think you'll find it's more service-oriented retail to take care of this part of the community. What we all are on the cusp of here for ourselves in Santa Clara County, and Santa Clara specifically, is how BART is going to transition this. So what my retail was 5 years ago is different than today, and you'll see the market move to reflect it. We're all hoping this is super successful and everybody rides BART, and you'll see the retail morph to that. But I would guess the short answer would be predominantly food and beverage and service retail.
Okay, and I was pleased to see that in addition to the 13-story hotel, you have a 13-story residential tower on this facility. So somehow you made the numbers work to put that in, and I guess to me it seems like you could put more there.
As far as you're talking about just number of residential units or?
I mean, when I see ACE and Caltrain and BART and the 522 and the tunnel to get through, I just see that this is the place to put, a ton of residential for Santa Clara, and especially since you have the Coleman High Line with all that office space, that you just want to avoid all the traffic and all the trips for.
1,600 is quite robust. I mean, just as far as, that goes. For us, you're going to remember, we have a set of rules we work with. Some you lay out, some are given to us by the market. And we're balancing all this. We're balancing our social needs. We're balancing what planning staff and what the community lays out for us. When we started this project, coming up with a very robust residential project at a transit hub was the first priority. And as you saw us, where our comfort level started at 1,000, and staff and the community is like, no, this is our chance. Come on, let's go. We got ourselves up to 1,600. It's all but 50 units of what's available in that zoning. Clearly, to build 700 units, get them built, get them leased, here comes Caltrain. If you all take it upon yourself as a community and you push, you find that there is more density opportunity down there. You know how developers will behave if you put the density out there. So I can't make density appear tonight out of thin air because I don't have an EIR that supports it. I don't think we want to lose the 1,600 units. But if this grows, as we've talked to our neighbors, to 1,800 units, 200 units more, we're prepared, to build those bigger buildings at those transit hubs. So I think there's a big picture here. And if as a community you decide there's even a bigger picture, it's human nature that guys like me will migrate towards that light.
So of course, with the density comes traffic. So, we would need a very robust TDM plan.
You will, and I think it was an astute observation
yeah.
that TDM plan will flex over time, especially if we flex, right?
Sure.
We're going to be inviting all that sort of that discretion on you. I mean, we may, I don't want to go down a funny road, but no pun intended, is this could be a lot of parking for high density when we have Caltrain and all that. So I think what we're going to see, we have these norms that we work to now, but you're right. If this project grows by a couple hundred units, we'll be back here and all the new rules will apply and for TDM, for parking, et cetera.
So my question is, you're doing the Coleman High Line. Is there any thought of doing a TMA in conjunction with that project?
So internally, yes. So we have our own little internal shuttle system that will run our office tenants down to the train station. I like to keep it, on site, on our side of the road. So we will be accommodating our office and the Avaya, and eventually, the apartment. The apartments are so close, they won't necessarily shuttle, but some people might because of age or other issues. So it's only intuitive that we'd be able to, if we had to buy that bus, why wouldn't we stop a couple more times as we head down to the train station?
And I didn't see any provisions in the EIR for scooters, electric scooters, and electric bikes, and Uber, and Lyft, and the shared ride services, Zip cars, all of that stuff. I didn't see anything in there.
Actually, there is parking of it. That was part of the commentary. So there is space designated for that in the development.
So yes, I mean it's implied, and I think the parking, there's bike parking. I don't think there was.
No, I saw the bike parking.
I don't think there were scooters
adequate.
when I started this project.
It's 1 for 3, which is not adequate. 1 for 3 is the old VTA standard, and it's going to be upgraded. It should be. I mean, you provide 1.4 cars per unit. Should be, at least 1 bike spot per 2 units. 1 for 3 is just not adequate, especially if you're trying to mitigate. You're adding all these bike lanes on Coleman and everything, and you have the bike tunnel to Caltrain, and just the 1 for 3 is not adequate.
So, in your motion, if you said something like the applicant will consider broadening the bike parking, don't make me pick a number tonight because I need to study it. But I think that notion, that way that will flow to City Council and they'll grab onto it and that will give us a chance to respond. I might come back and say no. I may say, yeah, I've studied it. We've got enough garages. We can add more parking. all the things you're asking for, almost, are really logical that makes the community better. So we're not going to lose this project over the bike parking, and but instead of just, if you could put that in your recommendation, that'll give me a chance to study it between now and my council hearing.
And there's a movement to go to electric bikes, so maybe chargers in your bike rooms or outlets. And then I was pleased to see that you were doing 6% electric vehicle chargers. What about pre-wiring for future? Because Jerry Brown's target was 1.5 million EVs by 2025, which is 6%, and 5 million by 2030, which is 25% of all cars.
And code is what, 3 or 5%?
I know in the EIR list 3%. I was pleased to see 6%.
So I tried to double. I mean, I'm almost.
Well, but that's installed. What about pre-wiring?
What we call is we can put the conduit in for
Yeah,
some.
that's what I'm saying.
Right. So we call it a ring into string, so you can pull it.
Yeah.
If you want to add that as a consideration, I can give a more thoughtful answer.
Thank you. Okay, now I want to give you something.
Oh, glass of water?
So condition 15, C15 here says, basically it implies that you cannot work. So is there any residential currently within 500 feet of your project?
I don't, yeah.
So condition 15 says that you cannot work on Saturdays and Sundays. Now, I talked with our planning manager, and if there is no residential, you can work 24 hours a day, 24/7.
I appreciate that. That will not help for the affordability of the units.
No, it does help for the affordability. The reason is the quicker you can get your project done, you've got this carrying cost of all your capital, right? You get that thing built quicker, saves you money, we get more affordable.
If you can waive that when I need overtime, that helps me a lot.
Exactly.
It saves staff a lot
And
of
so
time
the current says that, and we're actually working on a restriction, if you're doing indoor work, there should be no time restrictions as long as you meet the noise. But it says there are no time restrictions for properties outside of 300 feet of residential. So you can work 24/7, 7 days a week.
I appreciate that.
So I'm giving you something.
I'm sure that'll be popular
Chair
at
Jane,
home.
I just wanted to add one observation, though, is that once residential is occupied and built, if this is built over time, then that does
phases.
change
Yeah, in 2
the
phases.
situation.
But you could start the
It'll
second
expire with
phase,
the
yeah,
first
before
phase.
it's occupied. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, yeah, so, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I know we're going to get some good comments from the community, and then we'll come back and try and revisit as we wrap up.
Did Commissioner Becker have a question?
Yeah, is any of that retail that we were just talking about, is that any of that the size designated for another possible grocery store possibly in the future? I mean, we got Costco there, but not everybody's gonna be a Costco member, and 11 o'clock at night, you might wanna need to go pick some milk up for your kid, so.
It's probably a lot smaller than that. It's more, sort of 3,000 to 5,000 feet.
Okay.
So there's nothing big enough to be even as much as I would love to have a Trader Joe's and would jump flips to get them. I don't think I even have anything as large as 15,000. I might, but that's what Trader Joe's is. So I don't see it here. I hear that the Lowe's is going out. That might be a big grocery store.
Fingers crossed on that one over there.
So the short answer is no. But we love those uses. We agree with you.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to the public. So we have a number of speakers. First, we have Nirit Lotan, Michael Loziu, and Dan Ondrzek.
Good evening. I'm Nirit Lotan. I'm here to present the comments provided by Adams, Broadwell, Joseph, and Cardozo on behalf of Santa Clara County residents for responsible development. We provided detailed written comments today, and I have an extra copy for you. So in my 2 minutes, I will touch upon the main reasons why we asked the Commission not to approve this project at this time. So as was mentioned here, this project is in a prime location, walking distance from Caltrain, FutureBot, some of the busiest bus lines. This is an opportunity to maximize multimodal transportation and reduce car trips. But to do that we need a robust CEQA analysis. And unfortunately, this is not happening. It's not happening for a couple of reasons. First, the EIR failed to establish the baseline. The baseline is the crucial starting point to actually evaluate the transportation impacts. The city is using old traffic counts, including this old R&D building that was demolished. City argues it can use 2-year-old counts. Even if that's true, it's actually using 3-year-old counts. Second problem is the city is underestimating the impacts by taking credits for the trips that were done in this old R&D that was, like I said, demolished. The third problem, public transit was mentioned here. The EIR does not properly analyze the impact on transit. The city recognized that there is an impact on transit, but doesn't take the next step that is required to be taken and actually mitigate it, and is relying on future electrification of Caltrain. And finally, the city does not follow the CMP statute, which requires it to prepare a multimodal plan to mitigate impacts on CMP intersections that will further improve transit and transportation in the area. Thank you.
Michael Lazo.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mike Lozo for LiUNA Local 270. And I appreciate the discussion about affordable housing for workers. LiUNA is concerned still about the health impacts of the project on folks who actually will live there. We made some formaldehyde comments in terms of your typical formaldehyde products that are used in these kind of buildings, and they will pose a health risk, according to our expert, even if you use all of the compliant materials based on the Air Resource Board's requirements. It's going to be 125 cancers per million for those lifetime risks. The project consultant prepared a response to that, which cites to a state Supreme Court case, the California Building Association case, and they're suggesting that the formaldehyde is somehow an example of the environment's impact on the project. This California Supreme Court case did not say that pollution from a project, this is air pollution emanating from the project itself, was not subject to CEQA. This is formaldehyde from the actual building into the indoor air that people will then breathe for as long as they live there, for some of them hopefully for a very long time. Indeed, the Supreme Court actually says in that case that was cited that CEQA requires the disclosure of, quote, impacts on project's users or residents that arise from the project's effects on the environment. They have to look at what impacts it has on those residents. So we would definitely take issue with the response to our, what we think is a very substantive comment. It may be a widespread problem, but it has to be addressed. This is what CEQA is all about, is to try to identify even the things that haven't been thought through before. And I think this is what's happening with the formaldehyde issues. And it is a serious risk that should be taken into account. There are mitigations that we pointed out, and you should look at those seriously in order to make sure your EIR is sufficient. And we also have our other comments, which I obviously will not have time to go through tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Dan Ondrzek and then Adam Thompson.
Good evening. I'm not Dan. I'm a stand-in if it's okay with you.
Okay.
I'd like to, he has a statement prepared and I'd like to read it, so I will go a little bit slower. And I'm Donna West. Dan is from Reclaiming Our Downtown, co-chair. And we are in alignment with Adam and the Quad. This development is going to have a huge impact in the downtown and the Quad. And we have a downtown task force coming, and this development must interface with the downtown and must be carefully considered by the task force. We are, one area symbolically affects the other, and we should allow the downtown task force to come and study with the precise plan and carefully see how we can better communicate with one and the other, and consider the housing, retail, traffic, and how it adds to the people-oriented development. I'm not saying that we stop development, but it needs to but it needs to work and understand the impact of the precise plan with the downtown. And before we make any changes of the general plan, we should pause and understand the effect of the downtown and the quad, and make sure that any changes be done ahead of time before the development commences. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Adam Thompson?
I was going to speak, but I did send an email to you that you should have
You
already to
can
read.
speak if you fill out a
Later
card
on,
or
right?
at the end.
Okay.
I think the last card I have is Patricia Leung.
Hi, Commission. Adam Thompson, President of the Old Quad. The best thing I can say about this development is it's a missed opportunity if we approve it. The development in the area is going to be another parcel by parcel approach with leaving us with the same patchwork overlay of the train station downtown that we've been struggling with for 60 years. We need to look at the larger picture of the train station, university, and future downtown area, each with these areas greatly impacting one another, and should be considered when approving anything in one of these areas. Many meetings that they showed you they were poorly attended. I attended 2 of them. Some of them didn't get attended at all. Reached out to the developer. The developer has somewhat talked to us, but has not had a lot of community input due to the fact that many residents in the Old Quad actually believe the parcel is in San Jose and has nothing to do with Santa Clara. This is the best place in the Old Quad to put density. There's no single-family residence. Well, I'm up here usually talking about trying to protect a single-family resident from a high-density project. Here's a great opportunity to cram in as much density next to a train center and a future BART station as possible. And here we are putting in what is almost a bare minimum. I mean, Tasman East is looking at over 300 units, right, I believe, per acre, and here we are only talking about 100. Let's get it up there, guys. I mean, let's go to the FAA max. The proposed project is something of, for a transit-oriented development 20 years ago. Let's build it 20 years to the future from now so that it lasts its 80-year span that it's going to be there. The architecture, it's the same beige box that we see over and over again. I'd really like to see something iconic, as the developer claimed this project was, to be iconic. Santa Clara deserves something iconic. I mean, the NVIDIA project is iconic. It's different, whether you like it or not, it's there. So the things I would like to also say is if the FAR is going to include the hotel as part of the commercial space because it's a dismal 15,000 square feet, we need to build it in phase 1 and not kick the can down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Michelle Healy, then Rob Mayer.
Good evening, Planning Commission members. I am Michelle Healy from Santa Clara Unified School District, and we have met with Hunter Storm Developments and worked out an agreement with them, and they are generously willing to provide the school district some additional money to plant some trees that we had received, some large trees that we'd received for our school farm. And we've been looking for a donation to plant those trees, and so they're willing to do that for us, which we're very grateful for. They're also going to be providing some additional money so that we can buy some educational nutritional carts. They're called Charlie carts, and they're going to work exclusively with our farm and with our schools that have gardens in them. And so the teachers can use these carts to introduce history, art, and nutrition all at the same time, and they come with lessons. So our school district is very excited about these, and we appreciate the fact that the developer is also excited about providing these for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Rob Mayer.
Hello, Commissioners. Rob Mayer, architect and former planning commissioner. Thank you for your time. 2012, I was on the general plan update we're sitting where you are, and I always said we need a precise plan in the city because the general plan isn't enough. It's too basic. Here we are again now amending that general plan, okay? The problem I have, I like a lot of this. We want housing. If we can't build housing and some affordable at a train station, we're all in trouble, okay? As Mr. Hunter said, this is one of the key transit hubs in Santa Clara, and it's directly connected with San Jose that's going to get built out. I've been in this town for 16 years, and I still feel we are just setting our bar fairly low. If you look at the transit station in San Francisco, that's iconic. They got $110 million from Salesforce over 25 years to name that station. That money funds the maintenance of a 5-acre park on top of the station. That's iconic. That's cutting edge. That's futuristic. I don't want just nice rectangular boxes that are modern and interesting. I want something that has a soul of our city, that's unique to our city, not a building that I can go down the 101 and see. We have a rich history in agriculture, corrugated metal buildings, breweries, mills. There's other things that we can do at this train station to put our soul back in, create a destination and a true gateway, a gateway that's different than anything else. Take the train one day and you go down and we'll look at every station. There's not one single station that is a true gateway that you just say, wow. There's some cool train stations, but I want this to be a home run in this town. And I think it just needs some more time. As Adam said, you know, there's a downtown steering committee, and I think this could be a good opportunity to wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Jonathan Evans, then Patricia Leong.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Evans. I live in the community not too far from where this is going. I would like to have known about those community meetings, but apparently I don't live within 500 feet because that's all offices, so I missed all those. I'd prefer for staff maybe could notice broader and put it like on the online or something. I don't really approve of this plan as it is because I don't think it's dense enough. As everybody's been saying, this is the most transit-oriented place I think we have almost in the South Bay other than by Diridon, right? You have BART, you have Caltrain, you have the ACE train, you have the bus lines. We actually have our little Santa Clara bus, hub. Everything there is lending itself to building some of the most dense housing developments we could in the area. We should go as high as we possibly can. We should build as dense as we can there. We don't really want to waste this little area where we don't have single-family homes you have to compete with. It's just warehouses. And we also have this affordable housing thing. And the main problem here is it's a demand problem. We have more demand than we have supply. We need that supply. And this is the spot in Santa Clara you can put it with minimal impact. We do have to worry about traffic and reducing trips. It would be good to have more retail to serve those people in this dense area. We should go for a grocery store or something for them because Lawrence Station managed a grocery store and they have less space than you do. So I don't know how they got that Raleigh's or whatever, and you can't even, we can't get anything. So I think we can do better, but I'm not saying no to development. I'm saying we need more development. So thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Patricia?
Hello, commissioners. Thank you for receiving public input from us tonight. I'm a neighbor of the Oak Quad and a rider of Caltrain Daily, and I've been here before in support of other large-scale projects in the station area. And in this current form, and I am against this project. I don't think there has been enough outreach about this project for the neighbor, even though we do consider as part of the Oak Quad area. And none of us knew about it because we are not 500 feet within the area. This is a parcel by parcel approach, and it doesn't consider impact to the new downtown that we're considering at the moment. This design that I'm seeing does not incorporate the project into the neighborhood as we're envisioning it as part of the neighborhood. I'm actually very glad that the project is not, they're working with the school district, but when they want to actually provide housing for teachers and staff, in my opinion, the commercial property, such as a hotel, should be included in the phase 1 of the project to help with the lack of this type of property in the specific area that we're looking at, and also to address some of the transportation problems, like doing the hotel would probably mitigate some of the transportation problems in the first phase until like more transportation does come in. And I think like we have a huge opportunity here to build as high and dense as possible, being adjacent to the new downtown. And I honestly, this whole project does the area a disservice at the moment. I would love the commission to consider rejecting or continuing the this item until there has been more opportunity to provide more input from the neighborhood. And I would love to be able to provide more affordable housing in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Is there any other member of the public that would like to speak on this item?
Hi, it's me again, Donna. Thank you so much for all that you do, commissioners. Thumbs up for everything. I did watch the October meeting, and that's what brought me here tonight. I'm a 30-year resident and 15-year business owner, and a member of Reclaiming Our Downtown, and now live in District 3. And this is a highly visitable project within our community that I've been talking to other people. And it's not so much the high density in this area, but my ask is we hold this project until we can meet with the Downtown Task Force and assemble the precise plan for the entire area that includes solutions of street development, transportation, police and fire, and user-friendly architecture. We want to create a precise plan for this entire area, providing solutions to all questions. This should be with a citywide, all district, and new faces in the community to this committee to create this. The areas of concern, again, are the street development, connection to our downtown, and even Kaiser Hospital. How are people going to get back and forth? And there's ways of doing this that we can study. Architecture that's been submitted is ugly and boring. There's no style, no green space, and affordable housing. I've heard so much about this, but the tech workers aren't going to be able to pay the $3,000 per month. That's what we need to alert. So, quote from another person, this current architecture actually looks like a science fiction future out of movies.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
Any other member of the public? Do we have a motion to close?
Motion to close public hearing.
But technically, we need the rebuttal before you close.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Would the applicant like to have a rebuttal?
Yes, I appreciate the community's input. I don't think it's 100% accurate. On one hand, Adam, who's head of the old quad, has participated with us over the last 3 years. We're on their social media site. So we are trying to do our job, and we need to get feedback to give feedback. So our intention is to give good feedback. You can see the forces that are in front of us: more housing, less housing, more density, less density. So we've tried to work with staff and work with the amount of units that are in that area. Clearly, I think what we all have come away with tonight is I think our architecture is far superior than maybe the science fiction reference we have there in our architects here. But, and we would love to spend more time on it tonight, but I feel like in helping you craft, or considering, if you can decide to consider to craft a motion tonight, the affordable housing is a lightning rod issue for everybody. This is what I'm hearing. I know if I say X, you'll say X times 100. So I'm trying to do this on the fly and really try to bridge some differences. So first of all, we'll put all of our affordable housing on site. we'll waive our in lieu opportunity that we had even before we started it. I would like the 10% to be at, 100% AMI for bringing all that on and all that burden. I think that's a fair compromise, but in the 15 minutes I've had to think about it, that's what I came up with.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the applicant? Oh, Commissioner Becker. Okay. Commissioner Chahal.
Now we need a motion to close.
What?
Motion to close public hearing?
Motion to close public hearing.
Unless you were going to.
My question was that, does the Planning Commissioner ask questions of the applicant before we close public hearings or after?
Our practice has been to close public hearing first.
Sorry.
Okay, I can wait.
We had a motion to close public hearing from Commissioner Kelly, and then
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Casey. So are we voting on this then? We have a voice vote from Commissioner Casey and,
Aye.
and Kelly.
Aye.
Okay, passes. All right, are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Chahal.
You heard the members of the public asking for more density. So do you have some comments on that? Like, I'm not sure which phase one is the very high density tower. No? Two, okay.
Phase 2 is the larger residential tower. The idea would be BART shows up and now we're living in, in a more urban setting. As I said before, we're working to a set of rules, which is 1,650. If that changes between now and when we go to build that phase, that would seem like a very natural place for a revised application to go, but I can't promise something that doesn't exist. So I understand what some of the community wants, which isn't what exactly all the community wants. So I think more density closer to mass transit is a good thought. If you really take our roads and our parks out, our density is probably a little higher than we're getting sounded at tonight. And this is a material amount of housing and a material opportunity for affordable housing.
So I know I saw that those numbers, like attendance on the involvement in the community, I think 20 people came, 14 and 1 at the city hall. That's a very low number, really very low number, looking at the scope of the project over here. So may I put a suggestion, like if we switch that phase, like switch the tower phase first, that will give us a room to increase density in the next phase if we have to. But if we already building the lower phase first, then we do not have a room to increase the density. So what are your thoughts on that? Like we use the...
That wouldn't be possible for us. So I hate to use the no word at the podium because the way the property is subdivided and other works that we have to do on our own site to ready that second phase, we're not ready for the second phase yet. The other thing too is in that second phase, only one of the buildings is a high density building. So I do have more footprint there that I could do more high density in the second phase. And the third thing, which you'll be less sympathetic to, but is a practical thing, high density is what we call type 1 construction. It's concrete construction. The rents in this area don't support that type of construction. That the project won't get built as that type of requirement because the rents aren't there for it. So I need all these things to come together. I need to start the first half of the project. I'll have a little room to go more high density if in fact you compel me to by changing the zoning and stuff like that. And I'm hoping that rents then will increase. Nobody wants to hear that, but that rents over time, 5 years from now, go up to support that style of construction.
So you're saying rents are not high in this area? That's weird to hear.
Well, I think
Rents are one of the.
I think the idea is that once BART is there, people are willing to pay a lot more, and they will live in type 1 construction.
Also, too, we're at sort of a 8-year high in construction costs, so construction numbers could come back too. You know, so doesn't happen too often in my career, but they do dip from time to time. But that style of construction is not supportable in this trade area now. That's why you're not seeing it. But with high density and with, you know, the mass transit, we think it will be ready, and we're ready to do it when it's there.
So hypothetically, you say the phase 2 is also expandable to accommodate high density?
Yeah, I could probably add, you know, I couldn't add double the units, but I might be able to get another 100 or 200 units. I don't know, I haven't studied it, but I know what, I have a type 5 building, a type 3 building there, and a type 1. Type 1's what you're talking about. So I might be able to move type 3 to type 1 if the community, in fact, changed the zoning to afford more density there.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Casey.
I have a question to the staff. Up until while I've been on this commission, this type of project was always like a PD. I guess Tasman East, we had a rezoning change in GP. But with this project, what exactly are we approving, and what are we? I mean, what is the requirement of the developer if we were to follow the staff's recommendation?
I think one of the comments we've heard both from the Planning Commission and City Council were that we had too many PDs. And so we're creating a specific new zoning district that would be applicable to the entire station area. So this zoning would be available, if it's approved, for this location, this project, but also other parts of the Santa Clara Station focus area. So it will be a little bit more, you know, there's more flexibility with it since it allows a variety of uses and then the density range.
The reason, I'm sorry, maybe I should have made myself clearer. Okay. When we approve a PD, the developer is required to build exactly the design, and the density. They need to build as the plan was presented, but in this instance, if we approve a GP change and the zoning change, then what do they need to deliver?
It is the exact project that you're seeing. It works functionally just like a PD, because while there's an underlying zoning district, you still have a specific development that's analyzed under CEQA that is proposed, and they're only granted that, plus all the components of this development and this overall site plan are enshrined in the development agreement and the vesting tentative map. So all those things are, it's exactly like, functions like a PD.
So with the rezoning, you're really looking at circulation, density, where buildings are being placed. We're not approving specifically architecture. The architecture you're seeing is conceptual. They will have to come in with a architectural review permit that will dial in the approval specifically of the architecture, similar to a PD.
So that's going to go to the architectural committee?
Yes.
Correct. Okay, but in terms of density and how much retail space they need to deliver,
it's exactly what's being proposed. They can only get that much. It's no different if we had an architectural approval, we have that underlying ordinance, and they submit a 2-story house with 2,400 square feet. They can't build any more because of the zoning. They get exactly what that discretionary approval basically is approved at.
So Commissioner Chahal is asking, you know, can you shuffle things around? Can you build more units up front? But if we were to follow the recommendation today, then there's not going to be that flexibility.
There can be some flexibility as long as overall the density range is achieved in the number of units. So there's some flexibility in terms of from site to site, but the overall density has to pencil out.
I think what we would need to analyze is just from an environmental standpoint, you know, we've We've cleared 1,600 units. We've assumed certain things coming in at certain phases. So if that got altered, there would probably need to be, and we still stayed within the 1,600 units, there would still be some amount of analysis just to make sure that the phasing doesn't, and maybe it's irrelevant. I don't actually have the details of the traffic analysis to be able to say whether the phasing would alter this or not, but there would be some analysis on that. But really, when we look at the density, I think the greatest box that we're in is related to the environmental analysis, analyzing 1,600 units today. And that's really where, if we wanted to approve more than that today, we wouldn't be able to do that because the analysis from a CEQA standpoint is not there.
But let's think about an extreme case, right? If this commission were to ask the developer to build all 1,600 units in the two parcels that they're going to develop up front, is that something that's within the purview of what we're talking about here, or?
That would not be consistent with the site plan that's before you. That would have to have an amendment to the approval. Or we'd have to come back and redo it and then reflect that change in the environmental analysis before any action could be taken on that.
So that will require a whole process all over?
Well, it would have to be revisited to confirm that there isn't any additional analysis or doesn't change the impacts or the circulation, that kind of thing.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand what's within the real, what's allowed in this plan and what's not. I mean, because I'm still trying to understand. First, what I heard was they need to build exactly as it's presented here. But now I'm also hearing, well, but they may have some flexibility with phasing, et cetera. So
there's always some flexibility because it's an integrated site. And so as long as the numbers overall are achieved, we're seeing so many on each parcel.
Yes. Excuse me, but the overall number is limited by the EIR, not necessarily by what, the zoning and the general plan. So
it is the zoning because it talks about the density range. So there's a maximum density. Okay. So each parcel.
It could go up to 2,100 units. According to zoning, 100 units per acre.
Well, but not under this entitlement. That would have to come back if they wanted to add those units.
Because of the EIR.
Yes, that potential is there, but not under this environmental analysis.
So under the zoning that's under current proposal, they can go up to 2,100 units. They're limited by EIR. What about GP?
The same thing, because right now there's a range, and so again that's the underlying structure for establishing the density. Okay. But we still, there's still you're still looking at what's under the analysis and under the environmental document.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that the developer is allowed to build anywhere between 1,600 to 2,100.
No,
they're not.
Without redoing the EIR. According to zoning, they're allowed.
Yeah.
But
that's my question.
This is no different than if you see a general plan, say on El Camino, that's high density residential or a mixed use, and it allows 50 units to the acre, and someone proposes a density bonus of another 10%, that's 55. They can't come back because the parcel, the acreage allows twice that amount if they're only proposing the number of units that they've shown on that proposal, and you're considering that evening. There's only the analysis. There's the site layout. It's all been evaluated for a number of months, including the environmental analysis. So you can't just do it because the potential is there, because you're considering a specific project based upon the design, the layout, the traffic improvements, all the other amenities. Those are all a component of that project.
So the entitlement requires those exact plans to be delivered.
Yes.
The development plans are an exhibit to the development agreement. That is what they are agreeing to build, what is in the development plan, subject to architectural review.
Okay, because I looked at the development agreement and it doesn't have the exact number of units or the
But it
exact?
has the development plans attached.
It does reference on one of the slides, it does show how many units are in, I had it in the staff presentation. It's essentially how many units are associated with each parcel and in each building. It does have a unit count.
Okay, so that's exactly what they have to deliver or the
Yeah,
minimum?
I think there is always still some flexibility, though, in the proposal. Like if they say they want to take 20 or 50 and move it to another parcel and it's all within the same phase, will just be something we bring up at architecture. And if there's any additional analysis, we look at that prior to coming to hearing. If there's no effective change related to the impacts, when we would disclose that and present that to the architectural committee.
So what I'm hearing is the minor changes are probably okay.
Right,
but
minor changes.
Anything drastic, like several hundred units, then
Yes.
we're starting all over.
Right.
Okay, understand. Thank you very much.
Okay, Commissioner Kelly.
Okay, just a couple quick questions for the applicant. Just to reiterate, you are okay with 10% of the affordable units being on site. Getting back to the number of bike lockers, or I guess, rather than adding more bikes on site for the residents, I'd rather see more rental bikes available to residents, preferably the electric ones that I'm seeing currently in San Jose, because I think that would be more transit friendly. I would like you to comment on two things. The limitation that being close to an airport puts on the maximum height for housing there, and if the chemical contamination, which I've heard on neighboring lots, if that's impacting you as well on your plan. And then as far as retail, because I think everybody would like to see something more robust. One of the gentlemen did mention like a microbrewery. I think that site would be great for a microbrewery, and if that's something that would be possible, we'd love to see something like that. As far as groceries, because we obviously when we talk about housing, I see a positive relationship between your development and Costco, allowing the residents that live there to walk to Costco and do grocery shopping. So if you could comment on a couple of things I mentioned, that would be great.
Okay.
You want me to list them off for you?
No, I think I can swing the height. So essentially, all the property across from the airport's under what is called a navigate, I sound like one of my kids, sorry, is under an navigation easement. So there, as we get further away from Coleman Avenue, it enables us to scale the building heights up. So think about it down by Avaya. That's as tall as that stadium can be, because that's where the navigation easement sits. And therefore, the first office building is 5 stories, because that's where the navigation easement sits. But all of a sudden, the next one's 6 stories. And likewise, as we come towards Santa Clara, I call that west, as you come down Coleman Avenue, that navigation easement rises, and those buildings can move up accordingly. So it's just math. When you look at if you happen to go online and look at the navigation easement, you'll see a numerical value. That's to sea level. And by the way, we're about 50 feet above sea level. So you have to subtract 50 feet off of that as you go. Navigation easement sets then our boundary for heights. Heights are also impacted by the style of construction too. Type 3 is typically 5 stories over 2 levels of concrete. So we use the concrete like we would in an office building to create separation between us and the property. And that's how, when we go through the appropriate jurisdictions, that's how we look at dealing with environmental matters, creating parking, managing heights. So that kind of answers 2 questions in one. As it relates to the bike priorities, some are numbers, some are electric, some, I just think if you, if the motion could give me some room so I could do it more thoughtfully to include a more robust bike program, both in amounts and in types of bikes provided for our site and the community in that transit hub. And I mean, it's a little vague, but I hate to say, yes, you get 10 electrics and you get 10 plugins. Maybe I should be doing 20 plugins and more rentals. I just need more time to think about it. And I think I have roughly 3 weeks till I have city council.
Okay, just so everybody knows, though, the heights that you're proposing are pretty much close to the maximum that the flight plan allows, correct?
Definitely so. Definitely at the hotel, yes.
Okay.
Because that's the most forward piece.
And is any of your site have any soil contamination?
Oh, that whole area. I mean, all of Santa Clara and San Jose. So there are protocols that we meet.
Okay, all right, because
we just do what's required by law.
All right. Yeah, I would love to see San Jose do more, but supposedly neighboring sites are contaminated and they don't want to do as much cleanup that would require for residential. And then you are okay with us recommending that the 10% of the affordable be on-site, correct?
I would hope everybody comes down and gives me a hug, but yes, I'm willing to.
Okay.
In the spirit of cooperation, yes.
All right, I think that's it. I do have a question for staff, but I'll leave it at that.
All right. Commissioner Salem.
All right, so I just had a couple things that are some of the simpler parts. Since you are adjacent to Costco, you might want to consider a free Costco membership with the rent. You know, bundle it in, just make it a simple thing. Also provide some designated delivery drop-off spots for people who want to get Safeway delivery or Amazon delivery or other forms of delivery for food. Since they're going to be apartment dwellers, they may want to go to a less traditional go-to-the-store approach. The other thing, since we're scrambling to try and find the housing, I don't know if you've looked at it, but possible commercial live-in, the mixed work and living space, to add residential to some of the commercial space to gain a few extra units would be a possibility or a helpful approach that could get, you know, trading a little bit of the commercial for more of the residential. That's really it. I think some of the other points were made by the other commissioners. And if you've already looked at stuff like this, maybe just mention it, or if you think it's impractical, I'd like to know.
The Costco cards, we can't let the market take care of itself. I need to cough, I'm sorry. Sit next to you. The Costco cards typically will take care of themselves. I think we all get Costco cards with our driver's license these days, but as far as the duck-out lanes for the deliveries, that's built into all of our projects, and even parts of the apartment buildings have lockers so Amazon or Safeway can drop off when people aren't at home. The live-work transition, I'm not sure I really understand that. I have to meet a minimum commercial piece. I don't think they'll let me morph that. But if you did notice at our mix, a number of the mix includes a den, because we think some people will use the den for their live work inside these units. So 2 bedrooms and a den. The den's a office.
We actually recently approved a development very near us here that is a commercial frontage with an apartment attached, which gave the option to have a small business, but also have a residence attached to it so that the person lived there and worked there. You know, single small businesses, basically.
Yeah, like makerspace. I wouldn't rule it out. I couldn't give you a straight answer on that tonight.
Okay, Commissioner Becker.
On the EIR, according to what 2 people were talking about tonight, where is the formaldehyde at inside the building?
Everything we build is brand new, products that are sold in the market. So we're not doing anything. Typically, challenges are brought up like that in an environment to promote somebody else's agenda. So all of our products are all approved by the city of Santa Clara, San Jose, San Francisco. We're not painting our walls with formaldehyde.
And can I just remind the commission that that in the development agreement also that there is a LEED Silver requirement for all the development, so that those incorporate other environmental measures as well. Can I just mention one thing, just so the commission is clear that while the developer is agreeing to build the 10% on-site, he did mention that he would propose that at 100% AMI, not at the 80%, so just so you're aware.
I have a question about that. Commissioner Chahal.
We have like...
We have an hour before we have to extend our...
Except we have other business as well, so.
You know, I started that I was wanting to have 15% affordable housing, right? And now that we are moving towards our goal, both of our goals, can we ask for 12%? 32 more units, that's it.
What am I supposed to say? Like, hey, I'm the nicest guy in the world and I'm being great. No, I mean, I think the 10% is great. I think you're onto something, you know, maybe you split the AMI, half is 80, half is 100.
I was exactly
I mean, if you just think the sheer units, I know everybody wants me to have more units, but it's a great first step. And you've driven this in a really good outcome. So if I could respectfully say no to the 12, and I have a feeling that there's another ask though right behind it, so.
Okay.
There's no water, there's no break up here.
Okay, that's fine. I do have a question for staff though. You know, we are talking about making it flexible, as Commissioner Ikezi was asking. What can we do today to amend our resolutions to make it flexible so that they can get more density down the line, other than the EIR? I know the concept of EIR, they will have to come back, but can we do something other than that, which can give them flexibility so that they don't have to come back and other stuff?
All you'd have to do is support the rezoning and the general plan amendment, and that potential is there, but they still have to do the appropriate environmental analysis and the entitlement process, which would be an amendment to the DA, and probably just an amendment if we show that there's no adverse impact. I mean, possibly a rezone, but we'd have to look at that.
So basically, we can do the amendment to DA today in that clause?
No, because that hasn't been, there's been no analysis.
Okay.
They'll need to do the environmental. Yes, we would need to amend the DA if they increase the number of dwelling units. The amendment of a DA is something that would have to go before the Planning Commission and the City Council. It would be a new entitlement, so it would have a whole public hearing process. So it's not something that can be done at staff level. But it might be done with an addendum, you know, or might even be a Cat X if it's a small increase in number of units.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other names up here. This being a DA, I get to make all my asks. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Casey.
So maybe this is not directly relevant to the, the RR hearing, but are you using union labor? Is this an issue that's lurking behind some of the questions that we're getting?
If I could just remind the commission that these issues were not land use entitlement issues, so I'd caution you from proceeding with this line of questioning.
Okay, all right.
Just generally speaking.
I don't need to ask you that question then. The TDM, 10% right now, but do you think there's a potential to reduce the demand for transportation more down the line once we have more public transportation becoming available?
It seems sensical.
Okay, what do you foresee?
I don't, until the transportation gets there, I don't think I should speculate, but intuitively, that seems like a sensible assumption.
Okay, so would you be open to higher TDM requirements over time then?
I don't think I don't think it's fair or appropriate. I think I'm giving you a great project with the TDM, the way that everybody asked me to do it, and to start to promise something is not a reasonable ask. And I think if you change the zoning, we get more units, it's going to lead that TDM to be revisited. But I only know what I know today in the environment I'm in, and I do know, based upon my personal experience and my experience specifically in Santa Clara, is that our projects next to mass transit perform the best. And by getting this project here, that will inspire VTA to get this station, and these other things will fall in place when we have more specific applications to talk about versus hypothetical ones.
Okay, but my thought is many of the other projects, big projects in our city already require 20%. Even without being near BART station, even without being near any other transit stations, and the developers have committed to it, and I think you have an opportunity, well, there's an opportunity to manage transportation even better because of your proximity to all the public transportation. You're already close to the bus station, the Caltrain, and once the BART comes in, then I'm sure you're going to have lots of tenants who want to use the BART. So maybe this is not a direct question to you, but I think there's an opportunity to do more than 20% that's being proposed here. So that's my comment for now. Thank you.
Okay. This being a DA, my proposal is 10% affordable housing on site, of which 5% is 100% AMI, 5% is 80% AMI. The parks will be maintained at the standard of Santa Clara parks. I don't think that's an unreasonable ask. Electric vehicles would be 6% installed plus 9% conduit pre-wiring. Of course, I'd like to propose more Class 1 bike parking. I'm not sure, I know you want some flexibility there. I'm proposing 1 for 2, 1 spot per 2 units. And I did look through the document. There's not a really robust outlined TDM plan in there. It doesn't talk about shared cars or zip cars. I just saw no reference in there to.
The TDM is not done it's done as a condition of approval because you have to see basically there has to be surveys about what the activities are inside the transportation basically.
We've seen lots of robust TDM plans in the past as part of the EIR.
There usually gives options, but that usually is tailored to, I mean, basically post-development, so you see what the population is like, what the demand really is. It's supposed to be tailored to the population.
Well, we've had many developers agree to put zip cars in there.
Okay.
So,
I'm not resisting these things. I'm just, so.
Yeah, I'm just going to get your comments. And then being that Coleman is going to be widened, I really am looking for canopy-style trees, 70-foot trees that provide less heat island effect, more of a feel of that it's not a highway that you're driving down when you drive down Coleman. I didn't look at the plant list, but I'm just wondering, what is your idea for the trees along Brokaw and Coleman to give you that feel of a canopy and reduce heat island effect?
Public Works tells me what to do, right? This is actually dictated to me by the city, what type of tree.
The city doesn't do a very good job of that. So.
I can't solve it all tonight.
Chair Jane, I do know, and maybe the applicant could give some more specificities, but I think that there is definitely some undergrounding of electrical utilities. There's some complexities related that might.
But they're already widening the street, so they have opportunities there.
That's correct. I just would suggest that provide direction to work with the city city arborist to select the appropriate tree for the specific environment. You know, looking for as much canopy as possible.
Well, we have their arborist here. Oh, you're architect.
Good evening, Council. Gary Lehman with the Gazzardo Partnership. So we currently have specified some trees. We've been working with Public Works on that. We do have some good large-scale canopy trees. That's our intent as well.
Very good. Thank you. Those are the comments that I had. I think we're just going to have a discussion, I believe, at this point about making a motion and a discussion about a motion. So I see Commissioner Becker here.
All right, well, I recommend, as Commissioner Chahal has recommended, and Commissioner Chair Suds, Jane, and Commissioner Akezi, which is the affordable housing, that it should be a full 10%, that no in lieu. I mean, affordable housing is a major issue right now. I mean, Starbucks workers can't afford to live here. Grocery store clerks, I mean, I'm one step from being homeless myself. So it's something that really needs to be addressed. And if I had it my way, I mean, considering what other people were talking about here tonight about going more density, I would want to see more density then to increase that affordable housing. But as Commissioner Chahal said, 12% that sounds like a really good deal to me, but I know it might not to you guys. But that is something that we really need, and it's a really helping hand to a lot of hardworking people here in the city of Santa Clara. Because if you consider it, a lot of the high-tech jobs now, those are called blue-collar jobs now, because this area, that's blue-collar, and underneath that, you're pretty much low-class, poor class, like myself. So on top of that, I also want to see a precise plan. I see it more and more that we keep doing, like, I think it was somebody else, I don't know who said it, but it was the general plan amendment, where we keep having to change that, and we keep having a new process. Well, we need to have a precise plan, including with the new downtown. And going into that, that's where I was wanting to talk more about that issue of the underpass. The reason why is because it is a gateway crossing to the city of Santa Clara. It is actually connecting people. And the thing is, when I look at that option as well, I see it as people that want to get to Caltrain from that side. Yeah, you do have a pedestrian crossing, but what if you had a car crossing where an Uber driver can drop the person off, then go to Santa Clara University, pick up a student, bring them back to the station, or take them over the other side? That is something I want to see done. I think it is major. I mean, yeah, it's going to cost a lot of money to put these roads in, but the thing is that before Rome was built, you had to build the roads. And if we're going to keep putting all this high-density housing in, we're going to need more roads, we're going to need more modes of transportation. So seeing that Coleman and Brokaw are going to be expanded, the thing I see the most is, let me grab my notes right here, is Coleman Road, De La Cruz turns into Coleman. De La Cruz goes from 3 down to 2 through the interchange, and then back to 2 pretty much, with that third lane being the one that goes to the right, and also the merging back into Coleman. So seeing that we're going to go 3 lanes, I'm looking, it's not your responsibility, but I'm talking with staff on this issue, is that De La Cruz is probably going to be the future hub of a lot of our high-density development in the future. So I see that we have this overpass, this interchange that may need to be modified itself down the road, mainly because if we're going to start heading that direction, high density, especially near the airport, I think this is a major factor. Going back to the underpass, that would be a way to alleviate the grid light traffic. Like I said, a signature opening. And let's see, my other recommendation would be from Coleman turning left onto Brokaw, that it should be a double turn lane, mainly because that is an area that keeps backing up consistently. I used to work across the street over there on Coleman, and you would see the cars lining up from Brokaw all the way halfway down to almost Aviation, or that one road that's in between. Lastly, it's the public safety issue, and I think that's something that needs to be addressed a little more, is police and firefighter department has to go around. Yeah, there could be a possibility that San Jose might cover that area, but that is something that I want to see, because Santa Clara shouldn't be forgotten on that side of town. That's something I really want to bring that side of the city in, because like many people don't know, they don't know that that is actually a part of Santa Clara. I didn't know that was a part of Santa Clara until probably about 5 years ago. So that is something I want to see done for that area too. On top of that, the hotel I feel should be built in phase one. I believe Mr. Thompson was recommending that tonight, and I think that should be done because we do need the revenue from that. That would be a benefit, especially having a hotel that close to the San Jose airport. And then finally, it needs to be more architecturally pleasing. We need something unique and a signature for our city of Santa Clara, especially being the gateway. I'm really tired of seeing nothing but cookie cutter style everywhere around here. I'm kind of over the mission style. The city is the center of what's possible. Let's put our minds together and let's come up with something really creative, because this is a great opportunity. We have a great piece of property here for a great transportation hub. And I hear the calls for more density, but then also I hear a bunch of people around the city saying no more density. But this is an area that we can build it because it's away from all those single family homes. So I hope that these are taken into consideration, and I hope that council, once this goes to them, that they take this into consideration too, because this is major issues for this intersection that can actually benefit 20 to 30 years down the road. Because my question is, with the traffic, with how we're planning this right now, what do you see this area being like in about 20 to 30 years?
Okay, I just want to remind the commissioners that we have multiple things that we have to approve here. One, the first thing we would have to approve is the EIR. And in the EIR, we don't generally put any conditions in there. It's only in the zoning and the development agreement that we would be putting our conditions. So we could conceivably have a motion to approve, or, well, to recommend to council to approve the EIR, and then move on with conditions as we move down the list of resolutions. But, you know, we do have a lot of resolutions to cover, and maybe we should start with making a motion on the EIR.
I'll make a motion on the EIR that we recommend that the City of Santa Clara approve and certify the final environmental impact report, make findings with respect thereto, and adopt a statement of overriding consideration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the Gateway Crossing project located at 1205 Coleman Avenue in Santa Clara.
Is there a second? Any discussion? No one seconds it?
I'll second the motion to approve the EIR.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Kelly, seconded by Commissioner Salem. Do we have any amendments or any discussion?
I'd like to make one comment, okay. As far as traffic, I would like our traffic engineer to look at and work with Costco to have at least 3 entrances to Costco. One.
But that's not part of the EIR.
No,
We're just recommending the
understand
EIR.
it,
Can we just vote on that?
Okay.
All right. All right, let's vote. Register your vote.
Aye.
Aye.
He voted verbally, yeah. Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, the next resolution is to approve a general plan amendment for this property. Is there any discussion? Does anyone want to make the motion for?
I'll make the motion.
The general plan amendment? And does this include the rezoning?
That is a separate action.
That's a separate action, okay. So this is just the general plan amendment?
Yes.
Okay. So motion made by Commissioner Kelly, any seconds? Seconded by Commissioner Becker. Any discussion?
The only thing I'd like to comment on is that the zoning density is limited by the height restrictions on the project.
Okay, well, we'd like to call the motion.
I'd like to make an amendment to the
Oh,
motion.
okay.
So general plan, this part includes the density level.
The density
Yes,
is in the general
that
plan,
includes the
yes,
density.
yes.
So since the applicant is already proposing 1,600 units for a 21-acre lot, instead of on the minimum, currently the minimum is 50, but I like to propose that be changed to 80. And the high end is 100, but let's keep us open to more housing in the future. So I like to propose a higher maximum density level than 100.
So you're,
In Tasman East, we went with 120 minimum. Well, this commission went for 120, and what council approved last night was 100 minimum. So I think we can do more for this project, which is going to be closer to BART.
so the current project is 74. So that means that you would be proposing that we not even allow the current project if the minimum is 80.
So increase it to 80?
Well, currently it's 88, isn't it? I mean,
Thought it was 74.
I divided 1,600 by 21.4.
Because, yeah, the
wrong, Kat?
density is averaged over the entire project, and so it's higher in some spots and lower in another. So you don't want to make the individual parcels
Okay, so we need to go by parcel.
inconsistent with the, well, we look at the overall project, but yes, we still have to look at the overall density on each parcel, because they will come in as individual projects.
Got it. So what would that be?
I would just leave, I mean, I respectfully request that we looked at it at this level because there is different numbers of units on each parcel, but the average is about 74.
Okay, 74?
But,
Okay,
yeah.
so the minimum of 74 and upper end of,
But we're looking at this applicability throughout the station area plan as well, so that's why we had the floor at 50, at least 50.
okay, but the applicant does need to deliver at what they're proposing.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
Okay,
that will not change.
Okay, so we don't need to change the ceiling. But
No.
what about, I mean, the minimum, but what about the maximum?
I would support a higher maximum.
Any thoughts on that from the?
That's not going to change the number of units that can be built here, though.
No,
And we
but-
would still
but-
need to have additional analysis, I
But
think,
we're
just to
proposing
disclose.
a general
understand.
plan amendment,
General
so
plan amendment, right.
we're defining the very high density mixed.
Mhm.
So we could define that at 120 if we wanted
100,
to.
120, right?
120
Yeah,
is
Yeah.
okay, so
minimum.
you could do that, right.
Yes.
Thinking more like
120.
But it
Under
won't change the
50.
specific project.
50 to
so.
120.
So is there a, okay, so I guess this is an amendment. So do you, the maker of the motion, Commissioner Kelly, do you agree on raising the maximum density to 120?
I have no issue with that. Does that create a problem with the fact that the EIR is limiting us to 1,600?
No, because
Relation.
they would still only be able to build the 1,600. This would give them the potential to exceed that, but it would still be subject to additional studies.
Okay, yeah, no, I accept that amendment.
And actually, that's not the entire, so TDM is part of this, the second motion too. And so I like to suggest a friendly amendment to change the TDM goal to same thing as Tasman East, 30%, 20% from TDM efforts, 10% upfront, 10% from the public transportation. And once BART station comes in, and I think that level should be higher, and I think maybe we can discuss. If other
we could
commissioners
put
have
those-
opinions
we
on what the numbers should be, I'm open to it, but
So-
I think it should be higher.
So
20%.
we could impose a specific requirement during the rezoning. This is just defining this level of this new zoning category, is that correct?
TDM
Well,
goals for the,
we do put the TDM percentages into the climate action plan, which is what we are doing in this general plan amendment. So this would be an appropriate place to put the TDM percentage. if the
But this would
commission's
apply
inclined
to all projects that come under this category.
That is true.
Yeah.
But I'm having a little trouble in my head figuring out a way to just make it applicable. I'm hesitant to have a TDM category in the climate action plan that is different than what we apply to this project. I would
But
encourage you.
you could require whatever you want in the rezoning and the DA, regardless of what the zoning is.
You can require more in the DA than what is in the climate action plan. So if you want to strive for consistency, you could put it in this general plan amendment, and all projects that fall under this general plan classification would be subject to it. If you don't want all projects to be subject to it, just put it into the DA.
I think that might be something that's reasonable to discuss because we're talking about a GP for
the Santa Clara Transit Station
Center,
focus
right? I
area.
mean, so we're assuming that when this GP designation is going to be used, it's going to be near the transit.
And it will be used in future for all such
Right,
developments. So
right.
it's
Other side of El
good
Camino
point
as
to add
well,
that
right.
TDM, right? But we need to discuss what TDM, like we have a 10% for the
Get a 10% credit for being near transit.
being transit
Adding 10% from measures that they're taking.
measures they're
So do
taking.
we want to add more than 10% from measures?
So can we put a conditional TDM, let's say if we have, like based on BART, like additional 10% if we have BART?
When BART is completed, when it is operational, an additional 10% TDM measures shall be required.
Is that okay to put it in the general plan?
That would probably, though, be in the DA then.
No, but how can we incorporate more TDM on the general plan so that it is subject to some condition? Because right now, if they cannot support it, we are trying to put a conditional that when the circumstances allow.
But there may be other projects that are.
So could I suggest that you just basically have the language in the general plan designation that say that upon operation of BART to Santa Clara, that you'll put the ratios in at 30, whatever it is, if you're talking about 30%?
Or the second
Yeah.
phase, we have the second phase, assuming that BART will be open, have that subject to it?
I wouldn't do the phase of the project. I would do the BART
General
being
plan.
operational at Santa Clara.
Okay.
I think so.
We can do
It's,
that.
it's worth a shot.
Okay, so
Okay, all
Commissioner
right.
Casey, if you want to add
Okay,
the
so
10%.
2010 now? What's the,
10% additional on operations when the BART becomes operational in this area.
30,
That would be a total of 20% on TDM measures, via TDM
That's correct.
measures. Okay.
Total 30%.
With a total of 30%.
Total 30%.
30?
30.
Operation of BART to Santa Clara. Okay.
Total 30, right.
And what about the affordable housing component? I guess, is this an appropriate?
No.
That
No.
That should
That-
go
that
into
would
the
be
development
rezoning, okay.
agreement.
All right, so I guess I'll let you handle that. You're pushing this. Okay, so those are my two friendly amendments.
Did you specify the affordable housing? Is it the 12%? Are you?
Not here.
No, that's the other
That'll be in
agreement.
the rezoning or the DA.
Okay.
Okay. No, I'll accept that amendment.
Thank you.
120.
Does the seconder? Commissioner Becker?
I'll second.
There's a second?
Second.
I think she did it, right?
I can
Or-
So,
Seconded?
Oh, when you amend it, you second it, right?
so but the
I'll
maker,
keep
the maker
my
changes
second.
to the amendment, right? So the maker is now Commissioner Casey. Friendly amendment?
Yeah, but for a friendly amendment, you have to ask both the maker, the original maker, and the person who seconded that original motion, whether or not they both consent.
I agree. I agree.
Okay. So that, so we're
Commissioner
amended.
Kelly is still the maker for the
Yes.
voting. Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Unless someone objects, we can do it that way.
I'm sorry, we were having just a brief discussion. Do we need to amend the total number of units allowed then in the station area plan at the 120 units to the gross acre? So just to capture that, since this will be only allowed in the station area focus, the station, Santa Clara Station focus area? If we allow 120 units to the acre under the GP designation, then we would need to make sure we have a text amendment reflecting the total number of housing, residential units that are allowed in the station area.
You mean in the inventory, in the housing
in the
element?
general plan. Just in the general plan, it'll have to.
So
The focus area currently has, I think it was, well, it was a total of 1,635. So we need, so before it was less than that. So now we have to up that because the other areas, this is only 8% of the total square footage of this total acreage in the station area. So we have to allow for, if those 120 units to the acre, all the other remaining parcels would be allowed up to that. If they have that zoning that general plan designation.
So you'd like to make corresponding changes within the general plan to reflect this increased density?
Total residential units allowed in the station area.
So perhaps a sort of...
I think that language covers it. We'll just get the number before we go to council.
So perhaps just a directive to staff to make other corresponding changes to the general plan necessary to reflect this 120 units.
There'd just be, yeah, text
Make
amendments.
the whole thing consistent with the.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so are we ready to vote on that?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, shit. Hold on.
Passes unanimously. Now we move on to.
Rezoning.
Now we move on to the zoning.
I'd like to make a motion, ordinance of the City of Santa Clara, California, amending Chapter 18.22 regulation for various mixed-use combining zoning districts of Title 18 zoning of the Code of the City of Santa Clara, California, to add a new Article 3 regulation for VHDMD, very high-density mixed-use zoning districts, and approving a rezoning of the 21.4-acre project site located at 1205 Coleman Avenue, Santa Clara, to the new VHDMD zoning district.
Can I just mention that there was some typographical errors in that resolution title where it says.
I noticed that.
Yeah, it's not MD, it's MU, so there's a mix of so we will correct that on the final version.
Okay. Very good.
Any discussion? Okay, let's call. So we had a motion. Who was the second?
None.
Second.
No second? Okay.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Kelly, seconded by Chahal.
Making any amendments on the?
Not on this one. Affordable doesn't come under this.
What are we looking at?
We're on the rezone.
Oh.
Put the affordability into the DA.
I'm looking at the agenda and it's not, it's missing. Okay.
Okay, so we're just waiting for the motion to come.
Working too good.
On the,
So
Actually,
of course, this would be changed to 51 to 120?
To 120?
that's just the general, that's the item title, but we're still waiting for
That's
the
the
motion to
yeah,
come
that's it.
forward. But we would say as amended.
As amended.
As amended in the general plan.
And Well, that's my question. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, there's actually 3 different rezoning proposals put before you in the agenda report, alternatives 3, 4, and 5. Staff has recommended that you adopt alternative 4.
Oh.
Some of the specifics about that are decorative paving and landscape enhancements to the 30-foot north-south private street. You can see the details there. But I just wanted to clarify, are you recommending alternative 4 or 3 or 5?
Packet, this was the only one that had a designation of resolution number. So it had a number.
I believe Commissioner Kelly was reading the actual ordinance.
He's reading the ordinance text, yes.
Yeah, the title.
Yeah, this is the ordinance, right?
Which is alternative 4?
Yes.
Alternative 4.
We only have
Okay.
alternative 4.
All right. So it is alternative 4. Thank you. I'm finally up to speed.
That motion has been seconded, correct, by
Yes.
Commissioner Shahal?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So that would just be adoption of alternative 4. Elizabeth, are we still waiting for, we're still waiting for the.
I'm sorry, I just walked back in. Are you ready to vote now?
Yes.
Yeah.
The motion, yeah, the motion isn't up there, though. This is for the entire description of what's being approved. No, we just needed, yeah, we needed alternative 4 only showing.
The rezone, all we're doing is approving the rezone.
When you say showing,
This is just the title of the entire project. We need now the individual motions, and that would be alternative 4 on the agenda. That's the general plan amendment. See how it says 3? We need 4.
But she wrote in alternative 4. It's
Oh, I'm
agenda
sorry.
item
Okay.
3, alternative 4.
Okay. So we're just putting. Oh, okay, got it. Okay. Okay, so that motion is available now. You guys can vote. The commission can vote.
2 voice votes?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Passes unanimously.
Okay.
Now we move on to the vesting tentative subdivision map.
Okay. I'll make a motion or resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Santa Clara recommending that the City Council approve a vesting tentative subdivision map at 1205 Coleman Avenue in Santa Clara.
And that's alternative 6? Okay. thank
Alternative
you.
6. Second.
Oh.
I'll second.
Yeah, sorry.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right, now we're on to the hard one, the development agreement.
Rule of development agreement.
What?
You want me to make a motion?
Have a, let's see who we have here. Have any discussion? I would like to, before
I'd like
somebody
to
makes.
add regarding the bikes, I mean, to give the applicant flexibility, but I would like to see a component of the bikes on site to have a rental component, like electric bikes.
Yeah, shared bikes, like
Shared
Lime bikes and, so is that the, I have a well, let me just put in my number. of items that I'd like to add to the development agreement. First, I'd like to update condition 15 to very clearly clarify the work hours, being that it's not within 500 feet, to basically allow work at all times.
This prior to any of the residential units being occupied? Are you talking about before there's any
prior
occupancy?
to any occupancy of any residential units. My recommendation is that we have, the affordable housing is at 10%.
Commissioner, sorry, Chair Jane,
Yeah.
just to clarify on that, that's actually for interior work, correct?
No, it was not. The email that you sent me.
Right, so that was to have it reflect the current code, which has a,
Because you were saying there was technically no distinction made between indoor and outdoor work. We're proposing to change this with the zoning code update. But my question was, is this to say that there are no day or time restrictions whatsoever when further than 300 feet of residential? And your reply was that there are no restrictions beyond 300 feet of residential.
correct.
So that's what I'm saying. Because there's no residential within 300 feet, there are no restrictions.
Yes, until the residential is constructed.
Yes.
Correct.
So we can just add the language, say, this condition is applicable during occupancy of units. So we can distinguish that, because there wouldn't be any restriction currently under the city's ordinance.
That would be fine with me. The restrictions are only applicable when there
Following
is
construction hour restrictions
occupancy.
are applicable upon occupancy of units on this project.
Correct,
We'll-
correct. Okay. Then for the affordable housing, I wanted to see 5% at 100% AMI, 5% at 80% of AMI. The parks maintenance to be the equivalent to Santa Clara Parks. EV parking, EV charging at 6% installed plus 9% pre-wired. And escalating TDM, which I think we had already approved of. I'd like to provide some sort of guidance or flexibility, but I'd like to see that the current Class 1 parking be increased, preferably for 1 for 2, which means 800 bike parking, and then to have on-site shared parking, shared automobile like Zipcar on-site. Those are the things that I'm looking for.
So I have a question. When you're using the percentages, are you using them cumulatively or separately? I understand the 6% installed charging, but when you say 9% wired, are you saying 9% in addition to the 6%?
That's correct. That's what we've been doing for a number of developments.
Okay.
For a total of 15%. And then I would like to encourage the applicant to install some outlets in the bike rooms for potential electric bike use. That would greatly increase reduce the TDM. It would reduce the VMT because people would use their bikes more if they're electric.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry, the last one?
I would just say some provision for electric outlets in the bike rooms.
Okay.
Chair Jean, did you specify, I missed your request related to car share program?
I would like some provision for on-site car share. I think Commissioner Kelly wanted some provision for shared bicycles, so Lime or Bird or.
some residents may just want to use a bike now and then, and they would prefer rental versus having a bike all the time.
All part of the TDM plan. So,
Do we
someone like to make a motion or?
second or motion?
I can make a motion like recommend that the city council adopt an ordinance to approve the development agreement between the city of Santa Clara and the Todd Broca LLC for the property located at 1205 Coleman Avenue, Santa Clara, with the changes as we discussed. Is that fine?
Yes, that's fine.
It's been recorded?
Yep.
Okay.
As specified.
Have everything.
Yep.
Any discussion? Anything else? Okay,
second it.
well, that's, do we have a second?
Yep.
Oh, seconded by Commissioner Becker. Okay, then we can vote on it. Yes?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously.
Okay, so that's the sum total of the actions.
That's
and-
all of the actions.
And thank you very much. And this is proceeding to City Council's currently scheduled for December 4th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Not yet.
Next on the agenda.
Dinner time is going to be like 4 o'clock.
Rest of the meeting.
A lot of work.
Go get that cup of water, big man.
I am actually.
All right.
But
All right. So now we have reports of commission, board, liaison, and committee. Would we like to take a short break?
no, it's part.
No, let's go.
Plow through?
Let's finish.
All right.
I'm already left.
It's like,
Okay. Announcements, any other items?
Commissioner Chair Dean.
Yes, Commissioner
So-
Becker.
Commissioner Salome and myself and Councilmember Patty Mahan on the last architectural review meeting, we discussed the issue about, well, first off, I have to say, I want to congratulate Raj Chahal for being elected city council member. And this is part of that same topic because as he's going to be leaving us, Commissioner Salome, myself, and Councilmember Mahan have talked about the possibility that we start the process earlier through council to start vetting people to replace him after I think it's December 18th is when you take your oath of office. So hopefully maybe by Christmas we could have some people lined up to interview and then have a replacement after Christmas. So then we keep a 7-member body without any breaks or something like that. Councilmember Mahan sounded really enthusiastic about it, and I told the Commissioner Salome tonight that it would be something that we should probably bring up. And congratulations again.
Thank you.
I had an announcement. This afternoon, I attended the Silicon Valley Community Foundation's annual meeting, and the topic was Bay Area housing shortage, seeking solutions. And again, to the point that was discussed here, there is a severe shortage of housing. Assemblyman Chu, who used to be supervisor of San Francisco, talked about how Gavin Newsom's goal is 3.5 million new housing units by the end of his 8-year term, which he's expecting to have an 8-year term. That's 3.5 million housing units. I've said previously that California ranks 49th out of 50 in per capita housing. And if we just wanted to move up to New York's position of 40th, we'd have to build 2.5 million housing units. So this is causing severe housing shortages and homeless issues. San Mateo and Santa Clara counties added 182,000 jobs, but only 16,000 housing units. So the problem is just getting worse and worse. So that's all I had to say. All right. Any other announcements or board or committee assignments? Anything from HLC or architectural review?
Was that?
Okay, travel? Nope. Okay. So now we're up to Director of Community Development reports.
We will, just to mention, we'll provide a budget update for you at your next meeting. But the only two items that came forward for City Council, the Pomeroy project at 1530 and 1540 Pomeroy, that was the 8-unit townhouses. It was actually denied last night by City Council, but all your efforts on the Tasman East specific plan were approved. So that's just last night.
They didn't approve anything we asked for.
So did
They didn't approve anything we asked
touch the type of construction?
I'll defer to Rena.
No, they did not. They went with the density original staff proposal, and there was discussion about, to be honest, the majority of the discussion was really related to birds and to migration, because there was a lot of outreach from the Audubon Society.
They do have affordable housing. Birds do have affordable housing.
That was a large portion of the discussion. TDM was also a very large portion of the discussion. It was all of the members of council except for Teresa O'Neill supported the project, and Teresa O'Neill had Councilmember O'Neill had spoken up against the project, wanting more TDM to be included. Yes.
But I do have a question. So this commission recommended 120 units per acre minimum, and in the recommendation that was presented by the planning department to the council, it reverted back to 100. So can you tell us what the thought process was to, override our recommendation and to revert back to the 100 units per acre?
Yeah, on Tasman East. Staff actually, the Planning Commission recommendation moves forward as the Planning Commission recommendation. The staff recommendation doesn't necessarily change, or sometimes it does modify based on the input we receive. So I actually believed that the staff recommendation on the density did go up slightly from before.
Yes, originally it was 85, and
correct,
when it was
correct.
presented to the council, it was 100. But why was it not 120 that the Planning Commission recommended?
So the Planning Commission recommendation was the Planning Commission recommendation, but the staff recommendation changed after hearing the Planning Commission deliberation wanting 120 dwelling units to the acre. The reason why the staff recommendation didn't go from 85 to 120 dwelling units to the acre is because we realized that we needed, sort of similar to the conversation that we were having, that each individual project needed to have conformance, and that if each individual project came in at 120 dwellings to the acre, we would actually have more units than we could support in the Tasman East specific plan. So we wanted to be able to allow for a range starting from 100 dwellings to the acre. Excuse me?
100 is minimum, not maximum.
Correct. Right. So if you started at 120 dwelling units to the acre, we would exceed 4,500 dwelling units. So we wanted to be able to have individual projects provide density levels, a range of them. So originally we were at 85 dwelling units to the acre. We realized that we could up that to 100 dwelling units to the acre, but we wanted to be projects. This is staff recommendation. I don't know if I have to defend staff recommendation at this time, but we did not alter the Planning Commission recommendation, which we brought forward to the council. But the staff recommendation we did
up. I'm not asking you to defend it. I'm asking you to explain why you chose to go with 100.
Yes, and 100, and I can explain it again. We originally started out with 85 dwelling units to the acre. Upon hearing that Planning Commission said, hey, we want higher densities here. We also agreed, yes, let's go for some higher densities, but we do realize that individual projects themselves have to help us reach the target of 4,500 dwelling units to the acre total. That would allow us, if we said that everybody had to have 120 dwelling units to the acre, that would actually be in excess of 4,500 dwelling units to the acre. So we were allowing for some density variation within the projects, relatively minor, between 100 dwelling units to the acre to 120 dwelling units to the acre.
So that brings me to the other point, like when Planning Commission deliberated so long to come up with the type of building, and we recommended, why didn't the staff recommend that, okay, let's follow this thing, because we all agreed to that. So why was the staff agreement not?
The challenge of sometimes sitting here and deliberating like this, and is that you don't necessarily know all the math and the consequences behind the action. And so one of the challenges that we were faced with in trying to explain to the city council, what are we intending to do here? Much of the conversation was about trying to increase affordable housing,
Right.
and the intent was to get to increased affordable housing. The changes that were made at the dais were on the entire amount of our project and providing a density incentive on an entire portion of a project. However, what staff's original proposal was just on those net density increases in density levels. So actually, when we did the analysis, the Planning Commission recommendation, the intention was to allow for more affordable units. But the way that the math worked out actually didn't get that. So that's why staff retained our original recommendation of really trying to accomplish more affordable units.
So
Our
do you
intention,
sorry.
our intention was actually to incentivize type 1 construction. It was really, we gave them breaks on affordable housing so that they could go to taller and taller structures, so we'd have more parkland. That was our intention, not to go above 4,500 units per acre.
Yeah.
Understood that you tied it to construction type. We did the math on the number of units and wanted to, this is staff's recommendation, and staff's recommendation was we wanted to still get the greater number of units. We put forward the Planning Commission recommendation. We did a write-up of it in the staff report. So that's, it was presented, both options were presented and put forward to the city council.
And that was 10% of the units were affordable in that?
No, they decreased even less than that.
In the staff report? What was the percentage of affordable, 10?
It's
5
I would
for
have to
type
pull up
1.
So I'd have to pull that up actually.
Even for type 5,
Yeah.
they reduced.
I can come back at the next Planning Commission and give you,
It's already
an
approved. It's
update.
gone.
You can also see it. This is because it went last night to hearing. But I know it's really late right now, and quite frankly,
Next time.
I would be happy to give you guys a blow-by-blow, but I think right now is not the
And the
appropriate.
council meeting went till after 11 as well, so it's just.
But yeah, I'd like to hear the reasoning because, it's going
Well,
to
it'll
help us.
come back to us. Let's just.
Well, I'm asking the staff to come back with
Yeah, they'll
the
come back to us.
descriptions of the calculations that went into your recommendation.
Those were in the staff report, but I can present that to you all, but they were in the staff report.
I see.
Okay. So, anything else from the council meeting? No? Okay. All right. Upcoming agenda? Oh, I think that's it. Right.
Motion to
Anything,
close.
do you have a tentative list of items that are going to come before us?
I would like to say that the next Planning Commission is on the 28th, I believe. And that one, we do have planned for you a study session on parking. And so we are confirming the speakers on that. So we will have the city's traffic department to present on the parking program, the neighborhood parking program. We'll have Adina Levine from Friends of Caltrain, and we will also have CJ Gabby, who's a professor at Santa Clara University.
Okay.
Any other big agenda item on 28th proposed?
Not, we don't have large agenda items that I forecast. It'll be relatively small.
Okay. Small stuff, okay.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
So moved. Moved.
Moved by Raj Chahal, seconded by,
Anthony Becker in advance.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.